Welcome everybody to the Tuesday, October 17th Board of Selectmen's meeting. 6:30 we're going to go into executive session to conduct strategy sessions in preparation for, hold on one second. To conduct strategy sessions in preparation for negotiations with union personnel, or to conduct collective bargaining sessions or contract negotiations with union personnel. Foxboro Professional Firefighters Association, Local 2252, United Steelworkers, A&B, AFL, CIO, CLC. We'll come out of executive session, we'll go into the regular session at approximately 7 o'clock, and I'll read the agenda at that time. A motion, please.
Move to move into executive session.
Second.
Motion made, second. Any further discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor?
Aye.
Doc? Welcome back, everybody. Sorry we're running a little late. I'll read the agenda tonight. 7 o'clock citizens input. 7:15 public hearing, Bass Pro Shops, Bluefin's Lounge, Inc., DBA Bass Pro Shops, change of manager. 7:25 liquor regulation working group, discuss proposed liquor regulations. 7:45 Kay Conley, this board, Bill Keegan Jr., special town meeting articles. Review vote special town meeting articles, municipal charges lien, charter school reimbursement, acceptance of charter 33B, A, 10 a.m. opening, stormwater A, stormwater B, marijuana zoning modification, Commissioner of Capital Asset Management, conveyance of land, registered medical marijuana dispensaries. 8:45 Housing Authority, discuss Walnut Street project. 9:05 Selectmen's update. 9:15 Town Manager's update. 9:25 Assistant Town Manager's update. We have a bunch of action items. Doc, will you lead us in that?
Sure.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay. 7:20. Is anybody here for citizens input? Yep.
Hello, thank you very much for allowing me to come by. I'm Bob Hickey, 14 Baker Street, and also the executive director of the Orpheum Theater here in Foxborough. I want to stop by and introduce myself, also Rob Canfield, who is our director of programming, and Paul Beck, who is on our board of directors, and also colleague Jim DeVillis is on our board of directors. So I know that the Orpheum Theater has been around for 91 years in one form or another. Wanted to just give you a quick update. Everybody's been very supportive and very willing to work with us as far as getting established and getting on the ground. So 47 days into our adventure, we want to give a quick update that things are going very well. We've been enjoying super community support. We've been creating some pretty dynamic programming, and we also have a good sense of where we're going. Of course, we started off with the idea that this was going to be a community project, a community resource for all the nonprofits, performing arts groups with a regional appeal, and I think we've been true to that. In fact, we're in the high school, and the high school is going to be doing the first musical, I think, in over a decade at the Orpheum. We're supporting their boosters group to generate funds. So it's that sort of partnership that we're excited about, and that's going to make us successful. And I'm just wanted to give a shout out to Bill Keegan and Mary Beth Menard, as well as to Paige Duncan, who's been far and above the most phenomenal planning director that you could possibly have. Everybody's been so supportive. Because of that support, we are doing well. We're at the point where we're going to be ideally closing on the property next week, which doesn't mean we're done and funded. It means we're actually just starting, but it's a good place to start. We've created a pretty strong program base. This is our October schedule. November and December is coming out. Got some really cool relationships that we've either developed or been rekindled from past groups that have been involved with the Orpheums, so we're seeing very positive signs. One of the other reasons we're here is because the town was very accommodating with us in the beginning to work with us as far as liquor licenses. We're not a bar, but we are a performing arts center, and some of our customers enjoy having malted beverages and wine, and so the town was very supportive in allowing us, and as has your board, in doing a series of one-day licenses. And I know that we've been before you probably a little more than you anticipated. And I can only say it's a good thing for the business, because that means business is going well. But it's at the point where it's getting kind of obnoxious, and we recognize that also. So within the next week, we're going to be closing, and that's going to give us the ability to then apply for the annual. And I know that you can't prorate because it's set by law. But with the cost of insurance and the fact that we're probably going to need to hit our 30 limit by the end of the year anyway, we think it's the right thing to do from a business standpoint as well as from a relationship standpoint. So the next time you see me will hopefully be sitting there answering questions and giving you a schematic and showing the plan. But for now, I need to politely and abashedly request the one-day license. And just to show you, we received this customer request at 7:30 on Thursday. So we made it to 72 hours just barely, and it's not something that we sat on, and I would always give you notice if I could, but this is where we're at. So, do you have any questions about us, about the Orpheum, about what we're doing?
Can I interrupt for a second? I probably should
Please.
have done this at the beginning. I thought you were just going to make a couple of FYI updates.
I never go by script, as you know.
At this time, because I am a member of the board of directors, I'm going to recuse myself if this question and answers under further discussion, and I'll come back afterwards.
So,
All right, so in our ongoing support of the Orpheum, we're going to take things out of order. Could we do the action item? I believe it's action item number 17.
Approve a one-day wine and malt beverage license application for the Orpheum Theater for election night on October 17th, 2017, from 5 p.m. to 1 a.m.
and is it too late for me to ask that that be amended to read from 8 p.m.
Oh,
until
we're gonna amend
1
it.
a.m.? Okay, you're going to do that. I'm not a selectman anymore, so I don't do that. You do that. Thank you.
Don't worry, it will be amended.
Second.
Yeah, we'll cut that.
Okay.
So you're not looking for a motion from the floor?
Motion been made, it's been seconded. Under discussion, I recommend we change the starting time to 8 p.m. So,
So should I
yeah.
Read the request.
okay. So I'll retract my first, and try again. Approval of one-day wine and malt beverage license application for the Orpheum Theater for election night, October 17, 2017, from 8 p.m. to 1 a.m.
Second.
Motion made, second. Any further discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor?
Aye.
Thank you very much. And if I could ask, is it possible to get it signed now, because I need to take it to my insurance agent?
Okay, really?
Awful pushy, Bob.
Wow.
Caitlin,
You won't have
throw me a
coverage.
pen.
I may have some failings, but adherence to the rules is one of my strengths, so we're going to go with it. So.
I'll hand it to you, because I'll probably form it.
So while you're doing that, I would just like to invite everybody, we are always open for tours, and we would love to share our vision with each of you individually. We're a resource for the community. We truly believe that this is a community project. We're a nonprofit organization registered 501c3 in the Commonwealth. We're known as the Foxborough Regional Center for the Performing Arts, doing business as, of course, the Orpheum. So we're very excited about what we have available to us. The building has good bones, and we think we have a solid vision. So with your continued support, we hope to see you all out there.
So the next time we see you is going to be for the annual, right?
Unless something wonderful or bad happens, but yes, that is the plan. And we'll be filing that. As I said, we are anticipating closing next week, and then that'll give us the standing to do that.
Okay, good.
So no more one days for you.
Never say never.
It'd be a
But
lot easier for all of us.
we will see how quickly the great Commonwealth of Massachusetts comes back with their review and approval. But I'll definitely stay in close contact with Mr. Keegan, with you, to
Great.
make sure that everybody's in good communication.
So just for the record, obviously, this was an exception to the rule for tonight, obviously doing it the way it is, but given the fact that he's the individual and the organization has agreed to actually apply for a permanent license, the need for that probably won't have to get.
Yep.
Okay.
Thank you very much.
Good luck.
Thanks.
Thank you. Have a great night.
Okay, thank you.
Thanks, Bob.
Okay.
Hello,
Hello.
my name is Mbai Job. I go by MJ, and I'm the new manager from Foxboro.
We're gonna-
We have you on the
we have-
agenda.
We're
Oh,
gonna
you guys have-
go,
oh,
yeah,
you're gonna go through this?
you're gonna be next.
There you go.
Thank you, guys.
Appreciate your interest, though.
Just about 7:30, public hearing, Bass Pro Shops, Bluefin's Lounge, Inc., DBA, Bass Pro Shops, change of managers, might be Job.
Wait a minute. The Board of Selectmen, acting as the local licensing authority pursuant to Mass General Law, Chapter 138, will conduct a public hearing on Tuesday, October 17th, 2017, beginning at 7:15 PM in the Foxborough High School Media Center, 120 South Street, on the change of manager for the annual all-alcohol restaurant license for Bass Pro Shop, doing business as the Bluefin Lounge, 1 Bass Pro Drive. Manager may be Job. All interested parties are welcome to attend. Now you're good.
You can sit down at the table there, too. Yep.
Well, actually, I don't know how it works in Massachusetts. I mean, I'm from Rhode Island. I live in Johnson, Rhode Island. I used to work for Outback in Randolph. It was a little bit different than how you guys are doing it, so I don't know what you guys need from me to answer, but I'm taking over this business right now as the general manager. And I know we need to change Mike Middleton's to me as the general manager of Bluefin Lounge. Any questions I can answer? I'm just here to answer any questions you guys have.
Are you the manager now?
Yes, I'm the general manager right
Since
now.
when?
June I took over.
June,
In June,
you
yes.
took over?
Mhm.
Okay. Have you previously been a licensed bar
Yes,
manager
for Outback Steakhouse in Randolph.
in Randolph?
The application looks like it's in order.
You nervous?
No. I've done it so many times, I think I'm good.
How many hours do you spend at the Bluefin Lounge?
About 10 hours a day, depending on business.
Any questions from the board?
Just general question. I'm sure you're familiar with the state liquor license regulations, but the town of Foxborough rules and regulations, you're familiar with those?
Yes.
Okay.
And I know about the well, we have the 10 o'clock license on Sundays for the game days
Okay.
when they play at home. And I'm making sure that everybody knows about the laws. We talked about it every time when we have a game day, so that everyone comes in 10 o'clock, but we can't serve anyone until 11 o'clock. We talked about all the things to do with guiding people, making sure that everybody knows, I mean, up to 40 years old under, you have to guide anyone that comes in the building. And we talked about it almost every shift meeting that we have, to make sure that everyone knows how important it is and the responsibility that you have for someone coming in here, being drunk, going to the game, or driving back home. All this good stuff.
Yeah, good to hear. Thank you.
Thank you.
Very good.
Since June, has there been any issues
Oh, no.
that you've seen? No.
Never. I don't think even they have ever had any issues over there to do with that, because I work with retail to make sure that we're compliant 100%, and they do help me a lot about the situation in the restaurant, and to make sure that we're doing everything possible to get the licenses we need before we open, or if we have any event outside. A couple of weeks ago, we had Vince Wolfhard retirement party.
Mhm.
But we were not sure whether we have to go outside and serve alcohol. But they helped me out, go out there and find out first what we need to get done first before we can even do the event. And so they're always watching me first.
Okay. Vince Wilford, he retired?
Yes, he retired, and he's all done. He's all done.
That was a good friend.
Yes.
I'm joking.
He retired a while ago.
I know,
once,
I
you
know, I know.
Give Texas.
Yeah, Texas retired from there too.
Yes.
Yeah. Great, thank you.
Oh, thank you.
Any other questions from the board?
No.
Okay. One question. Are you familiar with Fox Cares, the Fox Cares group?
No.
Okay. Tomorrow at 2:30 at the Hilton Garden Inn,
Okay.
they're having a meeting. If you have time, I would recommend that you just go
Okay.
and introduce yourself. And on your application, you're missing some digits on your cell phone.
Oh.
So if you can leave your cell phone, so just so we can add it to the application, I'll make sure the Fox Cares group gets it, and they'll
okay.
contact you. And they're a great support group for license holders. They do internal stings, they do training as a group.
Okay.
They share best practices. They bring speakers in, talk about the latest trends with fake IDs. So it's a really good group. It's really supported by this board because they try and do things the right way.
Okay.
So.
Cell phone numbers in the business contact.
Oh, the business contacts.
Yeah, we got your
Oh,
cell
okay.
phone
That's
number.
what I thought it was. Okay.
All right. If the board has no other questions, we.
Move to,
Oh, wait.
oh.
It is a public hearing. Anybody in the audience have any questions or concerns? Seeing none.
move to leave public hearing.
Second.
Motion made, second. Any further discussion? Seeing none. All's in favor?
Aye. Move to approve the change of manager for the Bluefin's Lounge, doing business as Bass Pro Shops, to Maybe Job.
Second.
Motion made, second. Any further discussion? Seeing none. All's in favor?
All right.
Good luck. You're legal.
Okay. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Good luck.
Thank you.
You going to that meeting tomorrow?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
I'm gonna be living next door.
Okay. 725, Liquor Regulation Working Group. Discuss proposed liquor regulations.
You hear from the liquor?
Oh, you want to talk? Well, just to start off, I was the selectman representative to this working group. It was originally Dave Brown, Lorraine Baru, me, and Chief O'Leary. And periodically, we review the liquor regulations. And 2 years ago, if you remember, we had that sting where we had 10 establishments failed. And we had the hearings, and out of those hearings, there were 3 things that were came to light in regard to the regulations in discussion with Dave DeLuca, who's our liquor counsel. And so the first one was number 15. The police department may conduct regular compliance checks during the course of the year. Usually the police department sends a letter to the establishments like in January, like just to let them know that possibly during the year there might be a sting. But there was nothing in the regulation that said that there may be a sting. So we felt that that was just to give the liquor establishments a heads up. So that was just an important thing. That came from Chief O'Leary.
Yeah, but I read that differently, that because of the way it's underlined, it said the police department may, shall conduct. It looks like shall is crossed off.
Rich Noonan asked to be changed to may.
So this change says they don't have to do it every year.
Right, because he figured it was, what did he say? It was
He
because.
said that if for some reason in one given year, calendar year,
Right.
there wasn't a sting, like if it happened in, January, was supposed to happen in December and it happened in January, he didn't want to be
Right,
in violation of the regulations. So
yeah.
In other words, if-
It was just like a technicality.
He didn't want to
Used as
have
a
it.
technicality.
It's funny because
Yeah.
of all these,
Yeah.
that's what,
Yeah,
and I'm actually opposed changing it from shall to may, because I think we need to do it every year. So shall means we shall do it every year, we could do it every 3 years. So I looked at that differently. I would rather keep it
And
as
shall was
shall.
an edit to the regulations. And
But-
that original line was going to be shall, and then at our
he asked-
recent discussion, he changed it
to May,
to may.
So this is an edit to a potential edit.
right,
Mhm.
So this was,
That's
this
exactly
at
what
all
that
was
is.
not in the regulation?
right. The blue line, the
there
blue.
wasn't any language at all in it.
There wasn't, okay.
any.
So what you
Yeah, it
have
was
is
never
an improvement.
Okay. It's just weird seeing an edit to an edit when we hadn't seen the original edit. in
Yeah, the internal discussions revealed that it should go
Okay.
to,
Well, actually, I gave you guys a copy probably 6 or 7 months ago. It's with the transition from Chief O'Leary retiring, and then Chief Baker came in, and this kind of got lost in the shuffle. So we
Oh, okay.
we thought that, you know what, maybe we should just finalize this stuff, put it to bed,
Okay.
you know, these,
and they're actually looking at some additional changes down the road, maybe after the first of the year. We'll come back and make some further.
Yeah, Chief Baker has some recommendations, but these were
2 pages.
two-year-old,
yeah.
these were two-year-old changes that,
Well, we'll get these in place.
before the letter goes out and
Yeah.
before we start a new season, we were going
Yeah.
to catch up on.
So can we, with, I want to make sure that the language is in there, that they're conducting regular compliance checks during the course of a year. So what, I don't understand what Rich's
Well,
aversion was to shall and wanted may.
Well, his concern was that it could be a technicality for someone, for an establishment, that they could say, well, you didn't do one last year. You were supposed to do a sting last year, but you didn't do it last year. And maybe for some reason they didn't do it. They didn't
I think then
do
they-
it.
then they
No,
said, "I
but
needed
for,
to."
you know,
Yeah.
he was just, I don't-
Mhm.
that's the only thing he asked for.
Yeah, I just got an email from Dave DeLuca, too, who's looking
Yeah.
at these again. Just,
He didn't adjust that one, though.
no.
Oh, you want to continue on with the other
Oh,
changes?
okay.
Yeah.
All right. Then the other thing was, if you remember, for the violations, we had here, we could change, under the violations, the possibility we could change the liquor closing hours. And Dave DeLuca had said, that's on their license, so you really need a separate hearing to change the hours of the license. But he said, you could incorporate that in the violation hearing. So it's a separate hearing for purposes of discussing liquor closing hours will be conducted pursuant to Mass General Laws, Chapter 138, Paragraph 64,
yeah.
and can be scheduled to take place on the same day as the violation hearing. So he'll come up with language that'll, when you send the letter out. But he was just concerned that that was another technicality.
Mhm.
Okay.
So currently, our regulations now, first violation, letter of reprimand and/or suspension up to 3 days or both, and then optional with liquor closing hours of 2300 or 11 p.m. for 10 days.
Right.
That's currently in our,
That, yeah, and that's, and according to Dave, that's the problem, because in order to change, the hours are on the license. In order to change that, you have to have a hearing. But
Okay.
he said you can have the hearings concurrent, the violation hearing and the change, you know, if you're gonna go that route. So it's just
okay.
a technicality. And then the third one was, if you remember, some of the establishments, Chief O'Leary actually took them to court. And it was never in the regulations that they could be subject to prosecution. So we wanted to put that in. If the alcohol server provides alcohol to an underage patron, then the server may be subject to prosecution pursuant to Mass General Laws, Chapter 138, Paragraph 64A, and/or the town of Foxborough. So that was just, as a matter of fact, during the hearing, that was one of the things that one of the establishments brought up, that, hey, wait a minute, what do you mean prosecution? So this covers us, you know. So those were just the three. It was kind of like they've been kicking around for a year and a half, almost 2 years, so we figured just clean these up, especially where the licenses are going to be renewed. We have to, you know, we have to send them regulations. So just.
Right. And Dave's reviewing these?
Yep.
Yes.
Yeah.
Reviewing these. Okay. Yeah, I don't have a problem with the other ones. It's, you know, when you start, you know, playing semantics with the language, I just I want to understand why. Because it does have an impact. And I just want to make sure that we're covered.
So Kate, would be, I know this is not your, you're an attorney. May, shall, what?
It depends whether there's a consequence in there. So if somebody's gonna challenge, shall means you have to do it, but if there's no consequence provided in the regulations, like what happens if you don't do it, then there's really no impact.
Okay. So shall would be okay?
If there's no, without looking at the rest of the regulations, if there's no consequence, then yes. And if there's no consequence in the statute as well, chapter 138, which I don't think that there is, but.
Yeah, I think Rich's concern was if the police didn't do a sting.
Would they use it as a defense?
Defense, yeah, like
Yeah, they
a
could use it as a
technicality.
defense.
So that's why he wanted to change it to may.
But again, I don't see any consequence. What's the court gonna say? Oh, it's the fire department's fault, or it's the police department's fault because they didn't do a sting last year, and so this facility was allowed to violate the law this year.
Yeah.
I don't think it would be given a lot of weight.
So what would you suggest? Because this came from Rich, the police department, the lieutenant of the police department. DeLuca put shall.
Well, then,
Rich thought may.
Well, one thing with that,
go with anything.
it doesn't say a sting, it just says regular compliance check. So if an officer walks in to any of the bars and walks up and down, is that a compliance check? Or does it have to be a sting?
No, compliance check. He
Compliance.
said he does it on a regular basis, making sure the rules and regulations are on the wall. and-
Yeah, so there's nothing in there that says we're gonna send an undercover underage person to do a sting and test you. It just
Right.
says compliance checks. So
Right.
as long as they're walking in and making sure that, you know, last call is when it is, or nobody's, you know, 12 years old getting served, I mean,
Right.
is that considered legally a compliance check? I would say
Well,
it
and
is.
this just puts, adding this to the regulations, puts the establishments on notice that compliance checks will be done,
we just asked a
which it
question.
wasn't in there before.
So,
Yeah.
the group that you've been leading, Fox Cares, they've been doing internal compliance checks.
Yeah, as a matter of fact, at tomorrow's meeting, they're going to be discussing doing internal compliance checks.
Okay, so I guess,
I mean, we talked about what
Yeah.
happened 4 years ago with the, you know, with the 10 violations, but,
yeah,
you know, Fox Cares was an offshoot of what happened as a result of
Correct.
that.
Yeah.
And it's actually been a real positive.
But it's not only when the, because as Rich was explaining, it's not only doing, you know, sending in an underage, you know, a underage customer, but also they check to see if their license, you know, they walk in, they check to see if their license is being,
Right.
you know, so there's a lot of different, you know, reasons to be going in there. But this just puts it in the regulation to notify the establishments that the police will be doing compliance checks.
Yeah, and I don't think it's specific to a sting. I think just
No.
the police department,
No, that was just an example. I
yeah,
gave.
shall conduct regular compliance checks during the course
Yeah.
of the year, just in the normal course of
Yeah.
business.
Yeah.
I'd rather have shall in there than may.
I
But
don't care.
I don't know that, I don't, there's a legal or illegal fault to it either way. So I guess if the board's comfortable with shall, then put shall.
Yeah. And that was originally Dave DeLuca's language, so.
Yeah, right.
I wouldn't spend a lot of time on it.
we spent too much time on it already.
Oh, yeah. Yes, we have.
It's just an observation. Sorry.
No, it's a fair point either way. It can go either way.
Yeah. I mean, those changes are fine.
Yeah.
I don't see any issues with those.
Thank you.
So,
Do we
Thanks for
need to
doing
vote on it?
Hmm?
Do we need a vote, or is
Yes.
that just?
Yes.
Yes, you would need a vote
Right.
to,
Can
I
we-
would, and would have to introduce the amendment that you just made, so you would say that,
Can
the
we-
amendment would be, it would say that you would adopt with the amendment to include shall.
Can we wait till we have a finished, clean document instead of one with all these track changes on it?
And out of respect for Sergeant Noonan, I mean, I would respect for what he's, if there's an adamant reason that he wants it in there, then it can stay. You know, we're all kind of laymen here, looking at it from an attorney's perspective, hearing it secondhand, so if you could reach out to him and see if there's a good reason that he wants it in there, then maybe it stays.
Yeah, and if you're still getting emails about this from Dave, I don't
Right,
really
so we'll
want to
bring you a
vote on
clean
it.
copy on the 31st.
Okay.
Is that good?
And just
Yeah.
take a
It'd be
final action then.
it'd be nice if we could just clean it up so that the revised regulations will go out with the new
Mhm.
licenses.
Yeah.
Yeah, which
Yeah.
I'm,
That gives us
Yeah.
plenty of time to do
Once you approve it,
that.
then we
Yeah.
can do it.
yeah, but I don't want
Yeah.
to approve something with track changes all
Fair
over
enough.
it.
Yeah.
Okay. So we'll bring it back without track
Can you
changes
put it
and
on
with the,
agenda?
and we'll clarify the amendment.
Yeah.
Okay, very good.
Thank you.
I think there were a couple suggested language changes, small ones, but none of them were substantive that I could see,
Hmm.
that Dave was suggesting, so.
Thanks for doing that, Ginny.
Thanks, Chief.
All right, 7:50, almost caught up. Kate, Bill, and the board, special town meeting articles.
So, thanks, everyone. This is the board had requested that we bring forward the articles for consideration that will be, are being proposed for the special town meeting. We've laid those things out for you. We actually have the language, proposed language. We met internally on this yesterday, again yesterday, and then also reviewed things with Kate. We've been reviewing things with Kate on a regular basis, make sure the language is acceptable. There were a couple typos and amendments that we picked up along the way, but we think that the language, generally speaking, is in pretty good shape at this point. The question is whether or not the board wants to make sure that you're supportive of these proposed articles before we put them forward to the AdCom. The AdCom has them right now, but again, these are only proposals until the board actually takes this action. By the way, I want to be clear about the fact that this is a parallel process, so that the AdCom has it, so that and the board has it. It's not one in front of each other, because if we did it that way, there isn't enough time to make that work. So it happens parallel. If the board decides that they're not going to support these articles, then we pull them off, and the AdCom takes no action on it. All right, so this is how we've been doing it for a long, long time, and I think, is that an accurate reflection, Randy?
Yes, it is.
So I want to just start off by going through the articles one by one, and if you have any questions, we can certainly go through those. All right. So Article 1 is to see if these are transfers for funds, for available funds for Articles 4 and 5 of the budget. These are just amendments to the existing budget. And the one is administrative expenses to adjust it for $30,000. And that is for the, explain to me what
Public safety study.
Yes, thank you. The public safety study that the board had requested during the early in the year. We had talked about when we looked at the adding of the 4 firefighters. Was this the right time to start looking at the overall staffing requirements of the town? And because it had been 10 years since the last time we looked at that. So we're putting that forward for possible consideration. The public works expense is $35,400 for the fence for the casting of the fence in the center of town. We're actually going to have 6, I believe, is it? Half a dozen?
be prepared for 5 accidents or 10 sections.
Yeah, there you go, that's right, yeah, because each time it takes at least 2 sections, so that's, thank you for clarifying that. So it's about $35,000, is the estimate that we have for that. By the way, just to cast for one is a very expensive process. By doing multiples, it's a lot less expensive to do it that way. And the roads, the capital budget was for $24,000 for the pavement management the pavement management system update, which was every few years, I think every 3 years, if I'm not mistaken, we actually update that system.
Yeah, Roger did this 5 years ago, and he hasn't updated it since, so it's...
Okay, all right, so actually, I used to do it 3, so I was guessing, so 5 years is actually a while, there's a long ways to do it, so it is time to get that done. So, and we'll bring an outside consultant in to evaluate the roads and tell us what our overall condition of the roads are. And they also then, the last plan that was done was the one that was used, so we could actually prioritize the road improvements throughout the entire community. That works a lot better than just saying, I'll pick that road, because it takes the sort of the guesswork out of it, if you will. It gives you an actual condition with rich, and you go worst condition to best, and do it that way.
Was that just overlooked when he was building his FY18 budget? If it was done 5 years ago, shouldn't it be on a 5-year cycle, or?
I don't know that.
It's a one-time expense. You know, it wouldn't be something that would be permanently in his budget.
Yeah. It'd be once every 5-year type of expense, so it'd be something that, that's a good question, Chris. I don't know the answer to that, but.
Okay.
Yeah.
Phil, can I ask you, the $35,000 for the fence repair?
Fence sections.
All the times that I've seen it's hit, it's usually a car.
Yeah.
Or a truck. And it's usually followed by a police report and an insurance payment. So if someone hits the fence and it's a $10,000 fix, where does the money from the insurance go?
So the money goes back into the town, into the general coffers.
Okay.
Right, and then it ultimately flows back to free cash, and so we're actually taking it from free cash.
Okay, so this may have been supplemented.
Yes.
Okay.
Right. Okay. And what's interesting about this too, Jim, is that there are situations where we're not able to always collect.
Mm-hmm.
People are underinsured or no insurance, and they hit the fence, and then we're not able to collect it all.
Okay.
So
thanks.
Okay. Article. The next one is the
municipal lien.
Municipal liens. I'm going to let Randy speak to this. Or you want to speak to that, Randy? Just the municipal lien process.
You might have noticed, just a note, in our previous version, we had this as 3 articles, and with Kate's advice and Randy's encouragement, it's back down to 1 article. The 3 parts are in there. The AG's office said that it was okay to put them all back together.
Do you want me to address that?
Sure.
Okay. Good evening, Mr. Chairman, members of the Board of Selectmen, Kate Connolly, Town Council. The statute for municipal lien charges, Chapter 40, Section 58, does require that you have a separate vote for every municipal lien charge where you want to impose a lien on real property for somebody's failure to pay taxes. We wanted this to go smoothly. There are 2 of these in the warrant. This one has 3 different charges in it, and then there's another one later on. The AG's office, I contacted them because they ultimately are the ones that have to approve this, and I've always seen it, and they agreed with me that the statute requires that they have to be done separately. However, the person that reviews and approves these, in my discussions with her, I was able to persuade her that it's, as long as you separate them out and list each of the bylaws, you could consider that a separate vote. If town meeting wants to discuss them all separately, they can do that, but she agreed that when this comes before her, she didn't put anything in writing. It's not exactly a finding, but she's the person that reviews them, and she did say that she would take, if it just said all municipal bylaws, she would disapprove it, but she said because of the way that we worded it, it would be acceptable.
Okay. We talked about this yesterday, and we wanted to get clarification on that, so thank you.
Great. So there are, in order to, what we're trying to do here is take advantage of Chapter 40, Section 58, which allows the town to, as Kate described, to pass a change to our laws that allows the town to lien property for a specific violations. So we don't do a lot of this. That's why you have to bring each one forward separately. 2 of these are brought forward by the building commissioner, and the third one, I believe, by the town planner. The first one has to do with basically any zoning violation for the non-criminal disposition of a zoning violation, and cited in the warrant here. And the way the process works, if there is a cited violation, first offense is $50, second offense is $100, and the third offense can be up to $300 per day. These are non-criminal dispositions. The individual who receives a violation notice has the right to appeal this to the court within 20 days. That doesn't go away. And then after that time period, if the court ruled in the town's favor, either with the full fee or a reduced fee, the individual has 10 days to pay. None of that changes. What this is intended to protect the town against is zoning violations that were cited, upheld, and the individuals don't pay. Basically scofflaws. And the building commissioner tells me that this will happen maybe a couple, 2-3 times a year. And so rather than have this proceed to a criminal disposition, where a warrant is issued, and the building commissioner tells me that the courts don't want to see that. They don't have to deal with something de minimis as this in their courts, and that's why we would take advantage of this particular provision if something like this would happen, to actually put a lien on the property, and then it has to get paid ultimately at some point. So the first item brought up here is zoning violations, and then the second item has to do with violations of the stadium parking regulations. So somebody's parking cars illegally for stadium events, not in conformance with our bylaws, then the same process would apply, the same finding structure. I believe in that case it's actually $100 a space, and the individual who violated allegedly violated the bylaw regarding stadium parking would still have the full right to go to a court and have it overturned or reduced, and have a certain amount of time to pay. But if we do wind up in a situation where somebody's not paying, and it was upheld, this is a way to lien the property and actually collect it. And we actually have a live situation right now with one of those, and it's a good amount of money at this point. Those are those 2 items.
Can I ask you a question on
Sure.
the parking one? That is just for the stadium
Stadium parking,
not
stadium parking violations.
Parking during a snowstorm in the center of town? Or
No, not that. Stadium parking violations, non-criminal disposition.
Okay. So the ones that don't have permits and they're parking, okay.
Exactly. So the third one has to do with stormwater, I believe.
Sewers.
I'm sorry, sewers, so I'm not familiar with that one, so I'm going to defer to either Kate or the town planner.
Kate.
But it's the same exact concept, just to be clear. It's a non-criminal disposition of the statute that they're about to speak to, sewer violation, and
Same type of concept.
same processes apply. 20 days to appeal, 10 days to pay, and if not paid, we're asking for the ability to put a lien on the property. And again, there aren't many of these things that happen. It's just a protection for the town and actually a convenience to help unclog the courts.
What would be a sewer violation?
Sewer connection violation? I actually don't have that information from Paige or anybody, but I know that it was just, if Chapter 2, is it Section 210.6?
Yeah.
So some towns have regulations about who's allowed to connect and fees they have to pay to connect. So if somebody connects without the proper approval, then
Yeah.
they
Oh,
get
all right.
fined. There may be some other,
Illegal connections.
typically that's what it is. There may be some other specifics in Foxborough's regulations, but this would be one of the things that under, it's two statutes that we're talking about. As Randy mentioned, it's 4058, the municipal lien charges, but then the non-criminal disposition is a separate statute, Chapter 40, Section 21D. And the court that it allows towns to go to is district court, and people like the building commissioner or whoever's the zoning enforcement officer, whoever is responsible for the particular bylaw, can go to court and handle it on their own. I've done very few of these in my career, because typically the idea is to make it easy on the town enforcement officer to handle them on their own.
Thank you.
All right. That goes for Article number 2. The next one would be, the next 3 and 4 would be the articles dealing with collective bargaining.
Which hopefully we'll be
Nope.
discussing next week, next meeting with you.
And then the charter school reimbursement was the one that I presented to you following the Lowell incident.
Mm-hmm.
And so that was, we've written that language consistent with what Lowell effectively presented to the legislature. Just inserted
There's
a few words.
actually a typographical error in this one at the
Okay.
very end.
Yeah.
As Bill said, yeah, it's support for the city of Lowell, but then Foxborough decided to do its own request for a special act to get the 100% reimbursement for the charter schools. So at the very end where it says an act amending chapter, it says 7L, it should be chapter 71, section 89.
71, yeah.
Okay.
It's correct in the beginning, and it's correct at the end of the warrant article, but the part that says an act amending and
Oh, thanks,
caps.
section 71, okay.
Got it.
Great, thank you. All right,
I have the statute, it's extremely long, it's like 6 pages of this tiny type. But it's all the procedures and the costs, and the idea is to amend this to go back to allowing for the 100% reimbursement.
okay, the next one is dealing with, let's see, Article
6,
Article 6.
it's accepting a net road as a public way.
Yeah, but I think those are zoning bylaws. Each of those are actually are planning board articles, so we would not deal with those. Planning, 7 and 8 would, 8 is the Affordable Housing Trust, which you'll hear a presentation from the Housing Authority at 4:09 rather, on that. Article 9 is the acceptance of Chapter 33B, Section A, 10A, opening at 10 a.m. That's effectively the brunch law. What is effectively in Massachusetts, in Foxborough, we've been approached a couple times to open at 10 o'clock, and really, technically, we should be, we have never accepted that statute to allow us to technically do it. So this will allow us the ability to do that.
So this means that for home games, right now they're coming for,
They can come for 11 o'clock, and that's okay. It's
Yeah.
the 10 o'clock that we don't
For
have.
like the
we don't have
brunch for
Right.
Mother's
Brunch.
Day.
right, so they won't have to come.
No, they
Oh,
do.
They still do, they still do.
They
but
can't
okay.
even ask now.
You can't even ask until you have this
If town meeting
approval.
adopts this, then
Oh,
you
okay.
still have the right to say yes or no,
Oh, okay.
but they can at least ask the 10 o'clock question.
Oh, okay.
We've been granting the 10 o'clock opening.
Couple times, I don't think it was a lot,
For
but a couple times.
Mother's Day, Father's
Yeah.
Day.
Yeah, exactly.
So in
But we really didn't have
2005,
the authority to do that.
right,
Oh,
we discussed it at a
We've learned.
Fox Cares
Happy
meeting.
Mother's
We've learned it.
Yeah. So in 2005, the town adopted the Chapter 138, Section 33B, and stated opening between 11 and, 11 o'clock opening. And then in 2010, the legislation was enacted where you could adopt it and you didn't. I don't know if it was just an oversight or whatever, but the language on that, I have a copy of it. It's to hand out. I ran it by Dave DeLuca. The local licensing authority of any city or town which accepts this section may authorize licensees under Section 12 to sell alcoholic beverages between the hours of 10 and 12 noon on Sundays. And then it also includes the last Monday in May, which is Memorial Day, and on Christmas Day, or the day following when said day occurs on Sunday. So it's pretty much Sunday, Memorial Day, and Christmas. And I have a copy of this if you want to see it. So it was, and enacted as the brunch law, according to Dave DeLuca, and by town meeting approving this, you still have to grant. But you can now allow the grant. So if anyone wants copies, I can circulate them. There's two pieces there. It's the old legislation and the new.
In Article 10 and Article 11, Article 10 is DPW planning and conservation. And so that wouldn't be necessarily the Board of Selectmen in this case. So we don't need to.
No, I think Kate's going to talk about that one.
Did you want to address that?
Because this was one of those that we had as two separate articles, and then we put them back in together as one. Correct? Stormwater A and B?
No, I thought they were separate to begin with.
No, now they're back together.
Oh, I see. Okay. Okay, so these are also, get glasses here, municipal lien charges. The idea here is we just wanted to be able to have these two bylaws also have fines so that municipal lien charges could be imposed if people violated either one of these. And the first is the stormwater management bylaw, and the second is the stormwater management and land disturbance bylaw. And these were, I believe at the very last town meeting, these were adopted, and the Attorney General's comments, one of the comments that she had was, if you want to have liens on these, then you need to either include it in the statute or have a whole other vote amending the statute. And this seemed to be the simplest way to go. So the explanation to town meeting would be, we're not adopting we're not changing anything else in the bylaw, just adding this provision to be able to have fines if there are violations.
Any questions about that? Yeah. All right. Article 11 was the commercial recreational marijuana prohibition. Kate, you want to address that?
Yeah, this is one, so the marijuana situation is still very controversial and it's still very confused. The July 31st, the governor signed what's called the compromise legislation, and it was supposed to address all of the confusing and inconsistent provisions in the previous statute. It corrected some and it caused new ones, so there's still a lot of confusion. But one of the things that the Attorney General this is a different AG who reviews the marijuana ones, found that was confirming in the new legislation is that towns that have restricted areas that are going to allow marijuana but are going to restrict it to certain areas or prohibit it. So it's really everything. If you're either going to allow it or prohibit it, it has to be done by a zoning bylaw. That was not previously decided. Previously, the statute said you can have either a general bylaw or a zoning bylaw, or you can restrict it to certain areas, or you can have one less than 20% of the liquor licenses in town, and there were all of these different things that you could do. Now it's been determined that it's got to be a zoning bylaw if you do a moratorium, a prohibition. So Foxborough already adopted a general bylaw. There's a long explanation in this, which we could make shorter, but it's at town meeting, somebody needs to explain to people who may have questions about this, didn't we already vote this? Yes, you did, but since town meeting in May, the statute was amended again, signed by the governor on July 31st, and now it requires that you have a zoning bylaw. So it's the exact same thing, it's just making it a zoning bylaw so that it's going to require a planning board report and 2/3 vote.
So the previous article that was approved at town meeting, has that become moot? Is that thrown away, or is
No,
it
you still have it. You can
concurrent
have-
side by side?
Right, and you could decide at some point to get rid of it if you don't want to have it as a general bylaw, but you can have both.
And is it advantageous to have both, or is it just we have both, so don't bother getting rid of the other one?
So don't bother putting a recreational marijuana place in Foxborough.
Well, we
Don't bring us one.
we have a ban.
Yeah, we have a ban.
Yeah, okay.
It makes it.
So how does
That's a fair question.
this play into a ban?
It's now going to be a ban under a zoning bylaw, but it doesn't change the fact that it's a ban. You may want to get rid of, my opinion on having general and zoning, which the AG was recommending before, just based, not because they thought it was a good idea, but because that's how the statute read. I don't think it's a good idea to have two of the same bylaw under two different headings, because whenever you go to amend it, if you decide even though it's a prohibition, if you want to make changes and maybe allow it somewhere or whatever you might want to do in the future, you got to remember, oh, we also have to change that general one. So it might be a good idea to get rid of the general one at some point.
I would do it
or-
after this gets approved, though.
Oh, yes, and that's why we didn't do it now.
Yeah, down the road,
Down the
because
road.
That's
things
why we
may
didn't-
change again.
Exactly, that's why we didn't
We don't
put
leave
it on
any-
the
any
warrant right
coverage there at
now,
all, right.
Yeah.
so as not to confuse people further. And who knows, the legislation might change again.
We
Exactly.
have 3 next year.
Wanted to get the board's thoughts on having this explanation within the text. We don't do it for any of the other articles. Do you think that this should be done as a handout rather than an explanation in the text? We discussed it internally.
Yeah, we've discussed it.
We weren't
Just
really
didn't-
sure if it sort of stuck out, if this
Sort of
is the
gets
only
away
one with
from-
an explanation.
It's a little bit of a departure from what we've done in the past, but given the fact this was a bit of a confusing thing, Kate was trying to be helpful here, and my question is that something that the board would find helpful to include, or do you want to do it in a different way?
Could it be included in the AdCom
In the report?
report?
They could. Conceivably.
Okay.
Yeah,
Yeah,
it's gonna have to be explained 100 different times and ways.
It may go unnoticed, but I think that's highly unlikely, given how controversial this is. And if people are paying attention and they remember, wait a minute, didn't we just vote on that already? Yes, you did. We're now just making a zoning bylaw that's exactly the same as what you voted under a general bylaw.
Well, I think with all the changes and the confusion, I think an explanation is warranted.
Pretty unique.
Yeah,
Do you want it to stay in the text?
I would.
I would,
Okay.
yeah.
Okay.
Maybe
And I would
a
have a
different font
handout.
or a asterisk or something.
Okay.
And I'll also do a handout, and I'd have it everywhere.
And we could even explain it that night as well.
Yeah.
We're probably going to have to.
Okay. Article 12 will be explained at your next meeting on the 31st. Only the chief was away last week, so we want him to be there for the
Yeah,
for
that's
that
a
discussion.
chief and building commissioner proposed one, and we just knew that we weren't gonna have time to get through them all. And that one warrants more discussion, and we'll do that at the next meeting.
Article 13 is the article dealing with the land transfer for the fire department. And the last time we talked about this, the board meeting 2 weeks ago, the board had asked that we just transfer it directly to the town, but because it's being transferred from the state to the town, it has to be done for a specific purpose. Now, the land that we're looking at is land that's located up on Route 140, which could conceivably be a fire station location in the future. But also, all we're doing is basically securing the land under the town's control. We're not proposing a new station at this time, but if the land is available to us, we want to secure the land under the town's control for future consideration of that. If at some point in the future we decide we never want to use it for that purpose, we could give it back to the state if we wanted to. But if we can have the ability to have it under our control, it's effectively a strategic move on the town's part to have it under our control, given the fact that the studies have shown that we do really need additional coverage in that area. And so I'm going to defer to the 2 deputy chiefs who are here tonight to talk a little bit further about this particular article.
As they're getting up here, is the state giving this land to us
they give it-
free of charge? We just have to pay all the fees associated with?
I'm going to let them address that, but the answer is effectively yes, Chris. There's no charge to us to receive it, other than maybe some whatever transfer fees, whatever the case may be.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, sir. All right, Mike?
Yeah.
Deputy
thank
Keller?
you. This was something that we started to look at about a year and a half, 2 years ago, with the increased traffic going on in the center, some of our increased volume on routes 95, 495, the development of Foxfield Plaza, the apartment buildings both on Fisher Street and Foxborough Boulevard, and the addition of a new hotel. So we really kind of wanted to look to the future and started to be strategic in our thinking and how we really look for to the future and how we're going to service that into town. Especially with more of our resources being drawn towards Route 1, we kind of, had a service gap out in that side of town. So I started working with Senator Timilty before he departed office, and kind of piggybacking off of what the Housing Authority did, thought it might be a good idea to see if we can, secure some land for a future substation, knowing, the town's very fiscally conservative. I wanted to try to find the best value I could add without, costing anything to the taxpayer. And, with the assistance of Deputy Chief Buckley tapping into some of his abilities as a engineer, we were able to kind of map it out and found this small piece of land located next to the Shell station on Route 140. It's not a slam dunk if we go for this land. It requires a 2/3 vote by the Senate and the House, so it's a tall order. So you have to have a good story if you're going to go for it. And Senator Timilty at the time really thought we had a great story due to the incidents of traffic accidents at Walnut Street and Route 140, and routes 95 and 495 were identified as a really serious intersection and a high volume, I think one of the highest in the state in terms of motor vehicle accidents. So he thought that the legislature would look favorably upon transferring this to the town for the purpose of a fire station at some point.
So the state cannot just transfer it to a town for no general use. It would have to be for a specific use. So as the deputy pointed out, that at some point in time, this could be a consideration for a future substation, but it does not have this. We're not proposing that at this very moment. It's just the fact that there's an opportunity here for we might be able to at least secure the land for it.
And with the proposed funded public safety study, if that passes, that will also help us to look at response times, and I think we can tie that into this
Absolutely.
At some point. It's not just about staffing, it's about response times as well if we do a study.
But if we secure this land for the use of the fire department right now, 15 years down the road, we decide, no, we're not going to go that route. We think we need it for DPW or something like that. We could always have another special
right.
education, special legislation to change the use.
Amend the use, right.
Okay. So we're not locked.
And what the good thing of if it's in our possession at that point, then we just have to get to the legislature to amend the use of it. If we decide on to use it for something else.
I just have another question. If we do get this land and we do use it for a fire station, does that strengthen the argument for traffic lights on Walnut Street, especially when you're thinking about putting the elderly housing on at the corner of Walnut Street? I mean,
I would think it would strengthen the argument. Whether the state would actually do it or not remains to be seen. But I think it would certainly strengthen the argument.
See, the study is coming back. Representative Barrows has spoken to me yesterday about the fact that the Route 140 study is nearing completion, and he says he hopes to see the final version within 6 to 8 weeks, and believes that the Walnut Street's intersection is one that's being looked at very seriously for improvements. So we've identified that as a major concern to the town, and that's being reflected in the study itself. So irrespective of this action, I think it's going to get looked at anyways.
And through the chair, obviously the plot of land is big enough to hold a 2-bay substation or whatever.
We looked back and we asked the Castle Booze just to, hey, do you have a 2-bay station? And they recommended, I think at the time, not less than an acre. So I think we just proposed almost a 3-acre parcel.
Oh, is this 3 acres?
It's about 2.6-ish.
Okay.
Yeah, plus or minus. We were just wanted to make sure that we weren't pigeonholed into something small, because we have to ask the legislature.
Is there any time limit on it? So say we do end up getting this piece of land, do we have to build a fire station on it within a certain amount of time? It could be.
I don't believe so.
No, there's no time limit.
Is that a definite? There's no time limit, or?
There's nothing in the legislation that, or the transfer that cites, that establishes a time limit.
That's correct.
It does say that if the parcel ceases at any time to be used for the purposes set forth in this act, the title to the parcel shall, at the election of the Commonwealth, revert to the Commonwealth.
Right.
Exactly.
But there's no time.
In section 4 there, the town's responsible for all of the costs associated with physically getting the land. Do we have an estimate on those costs?
No,
The
I think
engineering,
we're because we have professional land surveyors on staff in the town at the DPW. I'm gonna assume, and I'm guessing that they'll be able to create the subdivision plan and write the deed description for the transfer, but we really haven't got into that deep of that part of it.
But there's also appraisal fees, title examination, recording fees, deed preparation fees. So there's, we don't have any kind of a ballpark on what that cost would be on a piece of commercial land?
I wouldn't, no. That's something that we could definitely research. We could get that information.
It'll be nominal.
Yeah,
It shouldn't be that, it shouldn't be that
it's
significant.
it's not a huge number.
Yeah, yeah. That's not a deal breaker.
No, I just, I don't know what kind of fees it is, so.
Well, that's a fair question.
I think you'll probably, you know, for if that was Acme Widgets trying to subdivide that property, you're looking at maybe $5 grand.
But you guys aren't doing widgets. All right.
No, I hope not. Any other questions?
Yeah, so the process, you would put an application for the land to the state that says, we're Foxborough, we have a need for substation.
Yeah, I believe we'd use Representative Barrows and have him go to the.
But the push is, we need a substation down there, and that this land would be large enough to suit it. What I'm concerned about is, it wasn't too long ago where the town was putting our public safety program together, and they said if they move it from the common down to where it is now, I'd have to dust it off, but I think the push was, we don't need another one. And I get it, times change, but now we're talking about something that not too long ago we said, if we did it here, we won't have to do it there. Where is the effort of the study that says we need to do another substation, in light of we just going through a process of shared 911 and combining sources? I think there's going to be a lot of distrust, anger, if all of a sudden a few years later we say, well, because we have potential free land, we're going to do a capital expense and build another one and staff it. People don't have short memories.
No, they don't.
Yeah.
But it wasn't a few short years. So this is our 10th anniversary in our station. So that study had to have been 15 years ago, I would venture to guess. I've been on the department for 27 years, so new station was talked about 27 years ago when I first got on.
Okay.
Yes, the town has changed. We had Sullivan Stadium when I first got on. That's all that was up there. You look at now the growth. It just came out in the paper that they're going to build a X amount bedroom.
Yeah, there's
90 bedroom
90
right there.
A third hotel for that area, which you know, 15 years ago we didn't have the residents in.
Yeah.
There was only 2 hotels. Now there's 4.
So I mean, I totally understand that. The fact is our station that we're in today would have never been built unless the state gave us that land. That's reality. I mean, we all know that. And that's why we looked at this like, we're not getting any land. Nobody's giving us land for free. And I'm talking about a commercial venture, because there was always talk, oh, we'll get, this person will do it, whatever the case may be. So that's why we were looking at this state. And again, this is not happening tomorrow or anything like that. So we're still planning out. And the reality is something else is being built on Route 1. I don't know what that is, but there is something going to be built up there. And all our resources are being pushed that way, as Michael was saying. So now we would be remiss if we didn't plan for this moving forward, that we didn't look at that end of the town.
Right, we're trying to be strategic in our thinking and really looking to the future instead of coming to you 5 years from now and saying, geez, we really have a problem. I mean, we've already had the people from Mass Premier Courts in here. I mean, that was a 9-minute response that felt like a half an hour. And that's 9 minutes in an emergency is a long time. And that's, you talk to the residents down on Gilmore Street about how the traffic goes through there between 3 and 6 o'clock in the afternoon. That's something we have to fight down 140 every day. It slows us down, so it's.
And that didn't exist. I don't even know where that came from. It's just all of a sudden it appeared.
I think that's an accurate statement, but I think it's really a three-pronged response. One is the fact that the whole dynamics of area on the other side of 95 has grown rather significantly during the past 2 years. You got the 40B project that's new. You've got the new hotel and the Forbes Crossing project that's new. What's probably even more significant is the fact that Mansfield is moving their headquarters station down to 106 in the other direction, which is further away from that location.
We cover 95 as a co-response with them, and they traditionally since we moved our station to Chestnut Street,
right.
They have a significant better response time.
More of a distance now. So those are three that I can think of just by sitting here right now. I don't know what the other factors were back 10, 15 years ago, but obviously things have changed. And I think, when I think about what happened at the Mass Premier Court response, but that was the response. That was the answer that we had. And then that's only just one incident, but I think the dynamics of that area have changed to the point where I think we have to at least look at it. And we have to think longer term beyond today.
Time is our enemy.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. But it's also, the development that's coming in. Take the Fisher Street. That was a big 40B.
Yeah.
You can't say no to it to a certain point, but where was this discussion when that was going on, when what the town needed? Same thing with the hotels and things that are going down on Forbes Boulevard. So it's a two-way street. You let people build and have high density, and then we get stuck with the bill on the other side. So this is a long discussion, so I'm not disputing what you're saying.
Oh, no,
there may be a need.
Those are definitely, we understand. I understand 100% of the
Yeah.
dynamics that you're talking about.
So just keep that mindset when we're talking about a senior development on Walnut Street. Don't forget about the intersection on Walnut Street. Or don't forget about all that other stuff.
No, and I think it's fair to talk about. I think a 40B is difficult to extract a lot out of, number one. The Forbes Crossing one was a redevelopment of an existing area. The only one factor was the hotel piece, and that was something that we all wanted to see that area redeveloped, quite honestly. And I think if it was a I don't think it was a marginal type development. It wasn't a huge margin in terms of making that work. So I think there was some of the things that would actually push it over. Don't forget that area has been looked at for redevelopment probably 4 times. And each time when they I think the last time it didn't go was because they wanted to upgrade the intersection of Central Street. And that just killed the project. So there's a fine line between killing a project and making it happen and reaping the benefits on that side. So it's a challenge.
Yeah. All I'm saying is you're reaping the benefits,
yeah.
but now you're paying the cost. It's a two-way street.
Yeah.
It's nice to have it redeveloped,
yeah.
but don't expect to go down 140 without a headache like you did 10 years ago.
Yeah,
and again, this is not a big discussion to have at this table.
It's the kind of conversation that's real. It's real.
I just wanted to point out that the Forbes Crossing, they included $75,000 in mitigation for a new roundabout, and they also did all the design. So it's actually almost probably $200,000 close to mitigation through that roundabout's work.
Yeah. Right.
Which someday is coming.
We hope. And we get the state to move on it, and that's the big challenge right now. Okay.
Great.
Good.
Right.
Thank you.
Thanks, guys.
Appreciate it.
And I think
Kate's back up on Article 14.
14
Yep.
is the marijuana. And so Article 14 was an article that we talked about here at the table, and I think Jenny had raised the issue about public use of marijuana. And it turns out we actually have a bylaw. We already have one in place. But what's missing from this bylaw is that the penalty was $200, is currently $200. The one that's in place, I think, in Norwood right now is $300. So this is an opportunity just to bump that up to make it more consistent with that.
So you ran this by Chief Baker?
Yes.
Yeah, and the non-criminal disposition statute allows you to have fines up to $300. You have to specify the fine. You can't, some towns say, Up to $300. You can't do that. You have to actually state what the fine is, but some towns will do 100 for the first violation, 200 for the second, 300 for the third, or just 300. So that's fine.
All right. In Article 15 is to see if the town will vote to, that's the dealing with the code of the town for the registered marijuana dispensaries.
Yeah, and the reason for this is that although they are called RMDs, registered marijuana dispensaries, that's distinguishable from commercial or recreational marijuana. Now that there's compromise legislation and confusion with the definitions, we thought that it would be important to make it clear that because you've got prohibition against the commercial or recreational, make it clear in Chapter 275 that you already have for medical marijuana that it is medical. The word medical was not in there anywhere. So all we're doing here, and rather than write out the whole bylaw, Paige and I discussed her idea of keeping it efficient by just saying, changing it throughout. So that's all this paragraph says, is that we're changing anywhere that it says registered marijuana dispensaries, it'll now say registered medical marijuana dispensaries. That's it.
Okay. That's it?
That's it.
You did it in record time.
Well, any questions?
See our eyes glazing over?
We covered 15 articles in a fairly short period of time. So we'll be coming back to you with more information on number 12, which is the one proposed by the chief and Police Chief Baker and by the building commissioner, Bill Caspara. And if there's any other questions,
Can we get more information on the last section of Article number 2 on the sewer part? Because there wasn't any definite answers that we got, really.
On the sewer piece?
Yeah.
I think, didn't we address that, though, further down, when we went down to the
Illegal
No.
the illegal connections?
I mean, is that all it is?
You want to know what is an illegal connection?
Yeah, I
What does
mean,
this
is
refer
that
to?
all
Oh,
the
okay, fair
fine
enough.
mechanism
That's
is?
fair, yeah.
It
We'll find
didn't
that
seem
out.
All right,
like-
we'll clarify that for you. Okay.
And I think just before Kate goes, she's going to be presenting to the AdCom the exact same articles tomorrow night. So just before we do that, want to just make sure you're comfortable with, any questions that popped out now or anything like that.
Well, I mean, you're not looking for us to vote and approve every one of these, right?
No, we're just in parallel trying to present them to everybody, but I want to just make sure you weren't,
Surprised by that.
yeah, that there wasn't anything.
Just, I know planning's not here tonight, but maybe if Paige, it looks like under Article 7, we're taking 7 uses that used to be allowed in general business, and we're striking that, saying that they're no longer.
Correct.
Are we allowing them in a different zone, or are they allowed in industrial?
They're already in the use table. I would have to go look at the other uses to see, the other districts to see what their allowability is. And it just came up that there was someone looking at the property downtown over 29 Wall Street, and they wanted to put in self-storage. And Bill Caspara and I said, that is just a terrible use for our downtown. And then that caused us to take an extra look at the uses. And some of these, if you look, I mean, they're really not something you want. A truck terminal or storage garages and parking lots as a primary use. Those aren't really what we're seeking downtown. So that's why the board opted to go and. But
Okay.
yes, if they may be allowed in other districts, I'm only dealing with general business.
So, okay, and
I'm not striking the use entirely, I'm just making it an N in the GB.
Gotcha. So if it may have, like a parking terminal may have been allowed in general business and industrial now, by striking it here, you're forcing it to stay in the industrial zone?
Right.
Okay. Thank you.
Okay. That's all we
That
have.
doesn't affect any existing businesses in any of those?
The only one that came up was Congdon, and it was discussed by the planning board at depth, and it's pre-existing non-conforming, and so they'd be able to continue their use if they wanted to do anything. They just need to go to the zoning board as opposed to planning, so they would be able to keep their non-conforming status.
Until they sell it, and then
Yeah, they could stay where they are and continue to do what they're doing.
but if they went to sell it, it couldn't be
No,
a...
the use would stay, it
it
doesn't
would-
run with the,
stays
it runs
with
with the
the-
land, yeah, not
Okay.
with the property owner.
So that's the only one that it affects, or doesn't really affect?
That we know of, yeah, that was, I mean, yes, I'm not aware of others that were being, that was the one we discussed.
I'm not sure if the, I'm not sure that the housing authority is here yet. Was that?
We haven't gotten our designer and John.
Yeah, so the full group is not here yet, right?
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah, and they wanted to answer
So,
that.
why don't you just give us a few, I guess we'll, as soon as they're ready, we can, probably can take a
There's some
few
action items.
action items, Mr. Chairman, if you want. Sure.
Thanks, Kate.
Waiting for the
Kate, all right, thank you. See you tomorrow night. All right.
Thanks. Kate, we're at McGinty tomorrow night. The McGinty room tomorrow night.
Public safety.
Oh, right, no, I knew that, thank you.
Ready? All right, move to reappoint Kevin Weinfield and Barnett Overroot as ex officio members of the Economic Committee expiring 10/17/18.
Second.
Motion made, second. Any further discussion? Seeing none, all's in favor?
Aye.
Move to approve the gift donation in the amount of $345 to the Council on Aging in memory of Nancy Williams from various friends and family.
Second.
Motion made, second. Any further discussion? Seeing none, all's in favor?
Aye.
Move to approve the gift donation in the amount of $250 to the Council on Aging for programs and services for the community from various friends and family.
Second.
Motion made, second. Any further discussion? Seeing none, all's in favor?
Aye. Move to approve the gift donation in the amount of $250 to Veteran Services for Veterans Transportation from Lawrence W. Foster, Post 93, Inc.
Second.
Motion made, second. Any further discussion? Seeing none, all's in favor?
Move to approve a gift donation in the amount of $500 to Veteran Services for the Iraq and Afghanistan War Memorial from Joshua Green.
Second.
Motion made, second. Any further discussion?
Yeah, just a point of interest. Josh is going to be the keynote speaker for Veterans Day.
Oh, great.
So it's nice of Mike to shake him down, too. So thank you very much, Josh.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Move to approve the gift donation in the amount of $200 to Veteran Services for the Iraq and Afghanistan War Memorial from Chris and Paula Mitchell.
I'm going to recuse
Second.
myself.
Motion made, second. Any further discussion? Seeing none, all in favor?
Aye.
Thank you, Chris. Paula?
Thanks.
I think you can actually vote on that, believe it or not, if
Yeah.
you're giving something to the town.
Well, we already did because he wrote the check.
That's true.
So what you gonna do, say no?
I know. But technically, just so you know, technically you're okay. Technically, you're okay with that.
Move to approve the gift donation in the amount of $10,000 for the Foxborough Opioid Task Force from Plainridge Park Casino to be used at the recommendation of Police Chief Baker towards the opioid crisis.
Second.
That's great.
Motion made, second, and under discussion. How does that work? Is it just that, what he thinks is the best use of those funds, or?
We actually have a group that, we have a Safe
Okay.
Foxborough,
Right.
and which we're actually looking to actually work on a more regional basis with the Safe Coalition at this point. So we'll probably have an internal discussion about that and then see how it could best be used.
Awesome, okay.
I just had a question. Is this, this is from Plainridge Park, is this part of that pool of money that they have?
Yeah, that can be distributed. Yeah.
That we had to
No,
apply for?
this was
I think
a
this is
separate
This is
drug.
This has
This is-
nothing to do with the mitigation.
No,
No.
this is a separate group of money, but it's a separate group of money, though, that they have,
Yeah.
that they wanted to distribute.
Paige was there.
Yeah, so what happened was it came about as a result of that pool of money. So when I went to meet with Plainridge to talk about the Gaming Economic Development Fund, as an aside, they said, hey, as an effective community, we need to make a charitable donation to your community. Where should we send it? So that's what started that ball in motion. So I think it's something they were required to do as an effective community, but it doesn't have anything to do with the gaming fund. But it did come about as a result of that discussion.
Oh,
And some of the things our task force has used money for is printing these books that are put out by Safe Coalition. There are these bright green books, you may have seen them around town, with all kinds of resources for anyone who's family member or suffering from opioid. It's just got resources for the community, and the printing of those is something that we've had to spend money for. And then our task force has also sponsored some speakers. So
We'll put it to good use.
as a group, having that money in
I was just
reserve.
curious
Yep.
how the dynamic worked, that's all.
They also gave $10,000 to the discretionary fund as well, so.
It's good. Nice to have money.
Yeah.
And I just, by the way, I just want to thank Paige, made a presentation to the Gaming Commission for a regional economic development project that she's been working with Plain Ridge, with Foxborough, and with Rentham, to develop this area as a destination, like for a tourism destination. And the presentation went really well from what I said. So
They've asked us to develop a budget.
Yeah.
We proposed perhaps creating a shuttle to connect the 3 destinations, because the Outlet Mall gets over 3 million visitors a year. That's a large number. People are in Europe, they know about the Outlet Mall. So it's something, there's a huge international travel. So they go to Boston, they can't get here. So they take a bus trip out here and they go to this region for the day. They never stop at our restaurants, they never see anything we have, and then they go back. So we're trying to work with, so we have Plain Ridge, the Craft Group, Patriot Place, Gillette Stadium, and the Rentham Outlet Mall, along with the 3 communities, all working together. And we're trying to create a shuttle, a marketing coordinator to sort of be at the table to draw in these tourist groups, and so we'll see. We're working with, and we're also trying to work on some workforce development, because one of the hard things around here is filling a lot of these jobs. So we're
Right.
trying to work
That's a
with
big challenge.
the gaming fund to perhaps do some workforce training and such.
So-
It's long range, but it's exciting.
And I know there was a short window to get
Yeah.
that presentation put together, and
Yeah.
how many communities actually participated?
only ones.
We were the only one.
So
Yeah.
there were a couple community colleges and
Yeah.
Mass Cultural, but Mass Gaming was definitely thrilled to see 3 towns and 3 large destinations/entities work together. So I think
Boston Visitors Bureau actually was very supportive as well.
yeah, they want to work
which is
with
nice.
us. It's really been great working, and I think even just this conversation is going to change our dynamic with them. I
Right.
don't know that anybody really knew what we had out here. I mean, we mentioned the Unlikely Story bookstore, Great Woods, the TPC, all that, I mean, it's just a lot around here that people don't necessarily know about. And then our downtowns, of course. Working on.
That's right.
Okay, thank you.
Very good.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Move to approve a gift donation in the amount of $175 to the Council on Aging from Jack Craig on 9/14 from the Friends of Foxborough Seniors.
Second.
For Jack Craig on 9/14, sorry.
Second.
Motion made, second. Any further discussion? Seeing none. All those in favor?
Aye. Move to approve a gift donation in the amount of $995 to the Council on Aging in memory of Nancy Williams, and a gift to the Serenading seniors from various friends and relatives.
Second.
Motion made, second. Any further discussion? Seeing none. All those in favor?
Aye. Move to approve a public event application for recreation for the Halloween parade on 10/28/17 from 2:30 p.m. to 4 p.m.
Second.
Motion made, second. Any further discussion? Seeing none. All those in favor? Aye.
Move to approve a gift donation in the amount of $105 to the Historic Commission for the purchase of books and materials from multiple donors.
Second.
Motion made, second. Any further discussion? Seeing none. All those in favor?
Aye. Move to approve Quincy Amusements, Inc., DBA Showcase Cinema Deluxe, change in beneficial interest.
Second.
Motion made, second. Any further discussion? Seeing none. All those in favor? Aye.
Move to approve Showcase Live LLC, doing business as Showcase Live at Patriots Place, change in beneficial interest.
Second.
Motion made, second. Any further discussion? Seeing none. All those in favor?
Aye. Move to approve a one-day wine and malt beverage license to Vic Patel, for his engagement party on November 4th, 2017, from 6 p.m. to 11 p.m.
Second.
Motion made, second. Any further discussion? Seeing none, all's in favor? Aye.
Move to approve a one-day wine and malt beverage license application for Foxborough Realty Associates for the NEP Beer Garden on October 22nd, 2017, from 6:30 to 8 p.m.
Second.
Motion made, second. Any further discussion? Seeing none, all's in favor?
Aye. Move to approve the 10/3/17 Board of Selectmen minutes.
Second.
Motion made, second. Any further discussion?
Just one note, it's, the Lions Club is L-I-O-N-S, not L-Y-O-N-S. It's it's in there.
Sure.
Number 10. Thank you. That was the only thing.
Yeah.
So approved as amended.
Approve as minutes.
All those in favor?
Aye.
We did the oath one already. So we can adjourn.
I know, that's next.
Candace, everybody here?
Everybody's here.
Okay, 8:45.
Perfect timing.
No, we're late. We're a few minutes late. Housing Authority discussion, Walnut Street project. Feel free to come to the table.
That's all right.
I have very little to do with this.
Thank you.
Okay. I'm John Mitchell, I'm the chairman of the Housing Authority. We have with us Ann Rietmeyer, the Women's Institute for Housing and Economic Development, who's our consultant. Sanders Clowen, who is the executive director, and Sue Perez, who is also a member of the committee. So, Ann, why don't you go ahead.
Okay. Sorry, I'm just rushing in the door.
That's okay.
So, does everybody have a copy of what I emailed to Paige?
Just
And
PowerPoint.
have you had a chance to look at it? I have a few extra copies, but I unfortunately didn't know how many of you were until after I. So if anybody needs a copy, I'm happy to provide it.
No, I think we're all set.
Yeah, we have
Okay.
the document.
Great. So, as you know, we have been before the Affordable Housing Trust. We are, the Foxborough Housing Authority was deeded in the late fall, meaning the late summer, early fall, a 16-plus acre parcel from the state through the Department of DCAM for no consideration, with the understanding that the Housing Authority would be responsible for putting out an RFP and selecting a developer who would develop affordable housing units on the site. This is a project that they've been working on for a while, as I think probably many of you know. They have done some preliminary work with the local engineering firm to assess the site, both in terms of soil, geological conditions, wetlands, possible number of units. And at this point, based on the needs of the community, from what they see, and also I think just looking at kind of larger demographics, they are interested in pursuing a developer who would be developing senior housing. And I also understand that there may have been some community meetings which took place in the last couple of years. I'm relatively new to this project, which from which came concerns that elderly housing or senior housing would be appropriate, and perhaps family housing would not be. I also know from both some of the concerns that were expressed at the Affordable Housing Trust meeting and from being at the site and talking with both board members and Candace, that one of the concerns with respect to this parcel is the traffic, our traffic issues and safe egress from the site. And I think we have a little bit of information about that we can share with you if that's something that you would like to hear more about. We're just kind of digging into it. What I have been asked to do was to look at what it was that the Housing Authority wanted to do in terms of developing a full RFP and the kinds of things that would need to go into the due diligence that was, that preceded any development of actually a written document, which would then be circulated to prospective developers. I should tell you that it's something that I've actually had experience doing before, both in a project with the town of Belmont, which had been given a parcel, significant parcel from McLean Hospital, and I helped the Affordable Housing Trust there in that town put together an RFP which resulted in the development of family housing of about 40 units called Waverly Woods, that I think some of you may know about. And and I actually have pictures of that. And I was also part of a team that put together a proposal which unfortunately was not selected, but an equally qualified developer was, for a site in Wayland on the old Nike missile site, where the town had done a fair amount of due diligence prior to even issuing the RFP. And the reason that I bring both of those up is that from my experience, the amount of due diligence that can be done at the outset directly, ties into the kind of RFP that you can put together and the success of the requester in getting qualified proponents who put together a good proposal. So that I think that it really makes sense to go into the development of an RFP with a certain amount of groundwork being done. So we put together, the Housing Authority and the Women's Institute put together a conservative and healthy budget that we presented to the Affordable Housing Trust. It was basically soup to nuts of everything that I was recommending that we do by way of due diligence before we actually developed an RFP, and also included the cost of the Housing Authority providing construction monitoring once the developer was selected and the project was in construction. We presented that to the Affordable Housing Trust, as some of you may know, and the feedback that we got in that meeting was there are other projects within the town that are worthy projects. We would like to not commit all of the funds which the AHT has to this project at the outset. Basically we were, it was suggested to us that we were, that we needed to look at paring down what our request was because the AHT was not prepared to fully fund the budget that we put in front of them. And that budget is in fact contained in the information that you got today, and we apologize for the lateness of getting the information to you. But we did go back to the drawing board and talked about, with a fair amount of care, what we could do at the outset to get the project, enough up and running in terms of both engineering, geotechnical, some conceptual work by an architect, some market study work, that would enable us to begin to put some more flesh on the bones of what a project might look like that the town and the Housing Authority would ideally like to see that would serve seniors. And that's reflected in the reduced budget that you have in front of you tonight, which basically the lion's share of that would, if you so approve and if town meeting so approves, would be funded by funds from the AHT, the balance of which would come from a combination of sources that we are working on assessing and securing potential funds, albeit they relatively small amounts from the state quasi-publics who are interested in working with the housing authorities to develop further affordable housing than their current portfolios, and potentially other sources as well. We can't say absolutely that we have those funds lined up, but we think that that it's roughly a $28,000 amount above and beyond what the AHT funds would fund, and we feel pretty confident with our resources and the feelers that we've put out that we would be able to raise those funds so that we could fund this preliminary budget, which is roughly $78,000. That amount of money, as you will note if you had a chance to look at the budget, includes both the consulting fees to the Women's Institute, some conceptual work to an architect, which I feel is very important to have done at the outset, civil engineering, geotechnical, probably a market study, also pretty important, and maybe an update, some soil borings, and an update to the phase 1, to the environmental report. And that at this point totals about the amount which we've reflected in the reduced budget. We are hoping that at that point we would be able to share with the Affordable Housing Trust and with the town, with the Board of Selectmen and other interested parties, including the community. And we also think that the community process is very important to how this project will progress. You know, there's a significant community that is very close by to the parcel, and I think, well, you know, certainly the Women's Institute and I think the Housing Authority feels that community process is extremely important to the successful outcome of this development. So that at that point, we would hope that we would be developed enough that if we felt that we needed additional funds to basically get to the point where we could issue the RFP and begin the process of trying to select a developer, that we might come back and ask for additional resources at that point, having also put efforts into seeing if there are additional funds that we can raise through the state. The site has had some work done through an engineering firm that was commissioned by the Housing Authority. We do know that there are some wetlands there. It's not a huge area. You do have in the document that I submitted for your review a survey that shows the wetlands. There has been some geotechnical work done. There is some concern about water level on the site, which would impact several things. One is it would impact, you know, needing to get, we would need to get more information in order to figure out whether or not any housing that was built would be slab on grade, or whether we would be in a position where we could do full basement construction. We would need more information on that. And then because of the lay of the land, so to speak, literally and figuratively speaking, having more engineering done would also tell us what runoff was going to look like and what we might need to do in terms of design around detention basins, that kind of thing, in order to make sure that by the time that we got to the development of an RFP, we had enough information to provide developers that the kind of answers that we would get from those developers would be pretty well fleshed out, pretty substantive, and pretty accurate, which is part of what I think is so important in the legwork that we need to do, and why it winds up having a hefty price tag when you think about the prospect of perhaps being able to develop up to 90 bedrooms, maybe less units if we did some several, you know, 2-bedroom units, because one of the things that I think many developers of senior housing have found is that there certainly is some demand for 2-bedroom units where people are able to live pretty independently, but they may need a family member or a caregiver to live with them on site as well. So I think it's an open question as to whether or not it would be 90 one-bedroom units or some lesser number that included some twos. And of course, I think we are very open to hearing both from the community and from other, boards of the town, if there are thoughts about a different number. Some of this is really going to depend on what both the architectural and the, civil and geotechnical tell us about how we can mass the housing on the site so that it is consistent with the character of the town and character of the immediate neighborhood, which I think is extremely important to the success of the project and the reception of the town and to the people who are ultimately going to inhabit this housing. If I could pause for a minute and see if there's anything else I want to say before I ask, accept questions, that would be helpful. I think one other thing that I will mention, although John is the authority among us, is that we have done some research about potential traffic light. And it does look like there may well be a study that is available that is in the process of being completed that we will have access to in perhaps another 6 to 8 weeks. And that would tell us more about, what's involved, what the cost might be. One thought that we have, although, is that there might well be, an opportunity to collaborate with the town and with the state for some kind of cost sharing that might ultimately be borne by the development. And that is something that we could potentially look at in terms of how we structured that request for proposals. So I don't want to go on and on, but if, I tend to be a little bit long-winded, but if you have questions that you would like to ask me or other members of either the board or Candace, please feel free, and we'll do our best to answer them. Thank you.
Questions from the board?
I had just a couple. I'm a little unclear on the. Thank you for that. It was very informative. You started off by saying, obviously, your goal is senior housing, and then to put it out for an RFP for a kind of a developer.
Yeah.
For affordability. Mm-hmm. Are we talking specifically senior housing, affordable senior housing?
Yes.
Only.
Yes.
So
Only.
It's age restricted, and
yeah.
what would that
we are
age
restricted
be?
by the deed.
Yeah, we're above the 10%.
Yep.
So we can do elderly housing, and that's what we have some information that the demand is there, so that's what we're going to do.
Okay, because there is a friendly 40B if we wanted to move this into
Exactly.
other stuff, but I want to make sure that's not where you're going with this.
I'm more friendly before it be.
Yeah.
Okay, so it's only senior age
It's
restricted.
only senior,
Yeah.
and there is, it's my memory from looking at the legislation and maybe even the deed, that there is language in the deed from DCAM to the Housing Authority that very specifically on the face of it talks about it being for affordable housing. So it's our contemplation, and one of the things that we would be doing, and it would be part of our services, is when we have a little bit more information in all the areas that I have talked about, we would be crunching numbers to begin to look initially at feasibility and not just, leave it to the developers in the RFP, so that we would have a good handle on what we can do and what we can't do with the resources that are out there. And just by way of background, you may well not be familiar with our work, but it is one of the things that we do. We are both development consultants and developers in our own right, and we are based in both Hartford and Massachusetts, in Boston, and have done a number of development consultant jobs like this, and also developer jobs or co-developer jobs. So we do have, I think we do have the knowledge and experience that we can work with the Housing Authority to produce a good result.
Okay. And I'm familiar with your work, and I'm very familiar with the Waverly Woods and the Nike site.
Well, and I actually, I don't know if others are, but I always think one picture is worth 1,000 words. I don't have enough copies, but if you wanted to take a look at them, this is a great project. It's actually family housing. And it was done by one of the for-profit developers called Affirmative Investments. And they've done a lot. They've done a lot of very successful, what I would call high-end affordable housing in Massachusetts and in the greater metropolitan Boston area. It's and frankly, one of the probably I would recommend at the outset that in terms of conceptual, this is not, you know, any recommendation that would wind up being part of the RFP, but I would probably look to an architectural firm that I've worked a lot with called Davis Square Architects, and they were the architects for that project.
Okay. So the reason I brought it up, and in full disclosure, Davis Square is one of my longtime clients, so I'll put that on the table for no other reason. But the reason I brought it up is both of those projects, and Candace, I spoke to you, I've known Candace for years, and my number one elephant in the room on this one is the Nike project and the Waverly Woods project that you brought up are not directly abutting a state highway that they fly by, and I was honest with you that I'm absolutely against this project if it doesn't have upfront focus on a traffic signal. Now, there's nothing that you showed me in these budgets. I mean, there's architectural and soil testing phase 1, but there's no effort to address the traffic light other than what you said, there's a report out there. I think this has been going on for a number of years. I look back at the minutes, 2012, 2015, you were looking at it. I would expect that that issue is addressed 90% before we spend any money on this moving forward, because Fisher Street went through, and we just talked about this, about putting another public safety facility down there because of the increased development. The 240Bs right down there, the big mall that's going across, the redevelopment, the demographics going here. If it's all seniors, Walnut Street does not have any sidewalks. They can't walk on 140. This is going to be 100% vehicular in and out. And that angled Walnut Street and 140 is a death trap. And I can't say it any clearer. Every project that comes along kicks the can down the road. Now we're talking about study after study. I got into an accident there in 1986. You'd be hard-pressed to find anybody in town that's been here for a long time that doesn't know somebody or can relate to an accident that was there this past weekend just a block away. It was, you know, people on Fisher Street.
Fisher 140.
Yeah, it was.
But they were residents. They were right off. They lived a long time residences right off of Fisher Street that was in that middle car with 2 children that they had graduated from high school. So I think I'm all for seniors. I'm all for creating housing for seniors, affordable seniors. But unless someone steps forward and says, we're going to do a traffic signal and this is when it's going to come, I don't want it to turn into, we're going to do a study, it's a level of service D, we're not making it worse, we're going to build it and we'll see what happens, because that's what's been happening for generations now. And now for us to invest in seniors living there, you know, and Candace, I've known you for years and you guys have great reputations, but how do we invest in this parcel for our seniors without spending more of an effort to get those studies, to get J. Barrows, to get the state to do something before we spend any more money? And if it's a grant or we get free land, so give it up. Is that the stick that we need to do it to get someone to be serious about this intersection?
I think we have a chicken and the egg situation here, Jim. Is that we want to do some of the beginning due diligence, but obviously we have a lot more work to do. We have to get a special permit from the the zoning board, and I think that we've talked about this, and I talked to Jay, and I think we have the correspondence from him, is that I think that we got this land, which is 16.2 acres of land in a very good position, for nothing. So I think we can put in our RFP to some developer, oh, by the way, part of getting this land for nothing is that you could put in some signals. And I think that's what we have to, there's some basic stuff we have to do before we can even get there. And I think that's where what we're asking for is this this initial grant of
Yeah.
money from, but I
Oh,
think.
no,
that-
I get, and I appreciate that, and I was hoping that's where you're going, but looking at your cost estimate, there's not one penny spent on a traffic engineer or a traffic consultant. I think that should have been a
Well,
large percentage of that
Well, I
78,000.
think that, you know, what we're gonna, this is, because again, our initial budget was 268,000.
Yeah.
And the Affordable Housing Trust only wanted to grant us 50,000, is we had to kind of scale back that stuff. But I think, obviously, with the process going forward, you know, we know that that's an issue, and we don't want to be creating an issue where, you know, once a weekend, we had a senior housing, you know, some of that getting whacked at that intersection. So it's clearly something we have in our plan, and I think we're gonna have to deal with that. And even if it's a contingency on the special permit, I think that, you know, we would deal with that. But I think that that's something that, you know, again, with the fact that Serpent is gonna come up with their study within a couple of months, and then we can identify that, and then we can incorporate that within our RFP, that we need to have a contribution. And apparently Jay has said that he's also talked to Stewart, and they're willing to make a contribution also. So I think we can, that's a solvable problem, because the state clearly is not gonna give us any money. And that's, you know, they will clearly, you know, they say, oh, that's a great problem, but, you know, you deal with it. But I think we have two very good sources that can make that solve that problem. But again, it's a chicken and the egg, and I think we have to get forward, you know, we have to do some very basic study to make sure we can actually develop this land. We really don't know that yet. And I think the stuff we're asking for, and as you know, as an engineer, we have to, there's a lot of rock as you're going up towards, going up the 95 ramp going south. There's a whole lot of ledge there. We don't know how far that extends back. So we have to do some very basic stuff to know where we can locate any kind of development. And if it's feasible, we don't really know that.
And I agree, this is an argumentative, I appreciate everything you're doing, and I agree. But as you said, as a civil engineer, looking at this, if there's town sewer, which I think it's there now, right?
No,
not yet.
That's certainly, that's one of the problems, is we've done some preliminary work at that, and the town sewer, to connect to that, we'd have to get down to Fisher Street, through the intersection, and that just wouldn't work.
Okay, so it's the viability of septic
Yeah.
you're looking at, okay?
So
Yes,
that's why we're
yeah.
limited to 90 bedrooms.
Yeah.
Oh, under the
We've been
10,000.
told that,
If we go
you
over
know, that
that,
the
it's
regulations are gonna change, and that maybe, you know, it's gonna be expanded, but right now, you know, we have a 10,000 gallon a day septic system.
Yeah.
So I guess my point of saying, as a civil engineer, the number one on the list would be working with the other entities around and getting the signal done first, and put some emphasis on that
Right.
with the initial allocation of fees, because you can have the best septic system and the best buildings, but if you don't have that signal, there's going to be outrage
Oh,
in
yeah,
town for building
again, it's a
something.
chicken and the egg. That's all something we have to work at together. Without that, we can't do it, and without a septic system, we can't do it either.
Without seed money, we can't even begin. So I guess that's really what it comes down to. You want some seed money for us to be able to address that in order for us to move forward and reach out to these other organizations. I think we have to start here for us to be able to gauge that. And we will incorporate it. We know the necessity. We're all well aware of it. We're all concerned, all of us, because we're all we are all longtime residents, so we know that, but we have to start somewhere. And I think we need this seed money to move us forward. It helps, it shows support from the town, it shows that initiative, it emphasizes that to the organizations where we're gonna apply for additional money. It all starts here, so if it stops before it begins, we can't even address it. And I think that addressing it is what we all want. So we have to start it up in order to do that. And I think that we have the most viable way to do it is right here. Senior housing, coming into a place that's already jeopardized. Start it here and let us address it as we start to move forward, and we will incorporate it.
So this may be an issue of a timing more than it is anything. The 6 to 8 weeks is a study, the 140 study is being finished up as it is right now with the Serpent study. I want to say, and I don't hold me to this, but I believe that they considered the fact that the parcel was going to be developed. And so the impact was being considered as part of that overall analysis. So we may see, without spending another dime of our own money here or anybody else's money, to evaluate that parcel with that impact into consideration. The one question is going to come into play, though, is that the report will come out. They'll say, yeah, signalization is required and it does meet the warrants. The question is going to be, how do we pay for the light, and who pays for the light, and that's going to be
Well, not only that, where's the location of the light?
Exactly. So those are design issues. Those are things that have to be considered, because one of the things that is a concern is because it is so close to the 195 ramp, that the visibility and ability to, when you're coming off the ramp, you're gonna have enough time to stop before you get to that light. And I think that's something that has to be evaluated very closely. The other thing that I will say in support of the project, though, is that we speak with seniors every month. We go down to the COA and we talk about this. The number one issue on seniors' mind is additional housing, new affordable housing. There are a lot of seniors that want to continue to live in the community, but they can't afford to anymore, or would like to downsize because they don't want to. They've got too much house and not enough ability to maintain it. So there's clearly a need. I think we're going to have to. I think Jim's point is really well taken. I agree that this is a major concern, that issue has to be addressed very clearly. I just don't know if it makes sense for us to wait for that study to come out and then see before you can go forward, feel more comfortable going forward on that, or if there's a way that you can find a way to address the building of a light there, because it's likely going to come out there's going to be a light be recommended for that situation.
And clearly, that's definitely going to be an issue, and but again, if we can't move forward, we also won't be able to be part of that. And I think that the need and adding that senior housing is going to help us to put that into, I guess, that primary focus on getting that light put in place and looking at these studies. We have a huge wait list. Our wait list is tremendously long. It has tons of local residents. The need for aging community in our housing authority is tremendous. I hear it every single day. I work with the Council on Aging every single day, and we just need more housing to keep our seniors in town. If we don't have some sort of startup place now, then we can't even move forward. I mean, we just can't. It just stops it dead in the water. So I guess we have to take all of these pieces, put them in place, look at the need, which is tremendous, look at the fact that we do need a traffic light, and build them all together. I mean, we're not going to let that drop off of our radar in this design and development. I think it's going to be front and center to it. But if we can't start here with, again, this seed money, and I hate to call it that, but we have to start somewhere. So I think that this is really incredibly important as far as your decision tonight on supporting the Affordable Trust decision to give a startup fee to get us to the place where we need to be to even address these issues.
Can I ask, am I hearing the study's been going, I've gone to the meetings, and you guys did the bus tour.
Right.
We're talking 4 to 8 weeks to get a report back?
About 6 to 8 weeks.
6 to 8 weeks.
That was something that we just heard today, actually.
Okay, so my involvement in this started in, I think, 2012, when you guys were in here talking about this. So we waited 5 years. Why can't we wait for another few weeks? Their report will come back with a signal, a four-way intersection, no signal because it's too close to the southbound ramp, northbound ramp. I've heard for years it's under state control. We can't put a signal because it's too close. If this report says we can, there's your answer. But to release money not knowing that answer, I don't think that's a smart thing to do. You know,
the problem is that, again, it's a chicken or the egg. We have to do some very preliminary work. And you know, we may be able to determine that it's not even feasible. But I think if we don't get it to this town meeting, then we're off
Another year.
Another 6 months. Yeah. And you know, and we have a little bit of a timeline on our deed. We have to do something within 2 years, I think. So we have to, I think this affordable housing trust this money is already there. It's like $375,000. We're only asking for $50,000 out of that to begin this study. And I think that's very, very reasonable in the circumstances that we go forward with that. And we're gonna try to find the other $25,000 or $28,000 from other sources. And I think if we can get going now, and then, sometimes you have to spend money to save money. And I think that's where kind of where we are.
Mr. Chairman, I was just, one suggestion here is that the town meeting is until December 4th. We could conceivably have that answer before.
Well, I was just gonna say, this funding, assuming we approve it and it goes forward to town meeting.
It's a recommendation.
Whatever. We can condition it based on, the outcome of that study. They can't spend any funds until it's approved
That's right.
at town meeting anyway.
Yeah.
Right.
So
I understand their point. They would have to wait essentially till next annual town meeting in May. If the study comes back and says you need a light at the intersection, you have the answer. Then it's a question of how do you address it, and you can't go forward unless for another 6 months, if that happens. So, and the other thought that I had too is that you might be able to reach out to Serpent and say, what's your preliminary findings on this, so we can at least have some indication.
We could certainly make an effort to.
Yeah, we can work with them too to find that out.
yeah, it'd be interesting to find out what additional impact they carried for the development of that site.
I think that's fair too.
And really, what are the traffic counts they're expecting coming out of that site? Because,
For what Jay Barrow said is that they have been able to factor that in, and they've also been able to factor in what comes out of the Stewart facilities, and it's clearly qualified for it. So, because Jay was so important in getting this stuff passed, he also was on top of all of it, and made sure that once we got the legislation filed, that information got to the Serpent people. So this is, the development has already been factored into their study. So, this isn't anything they're gonna add on top as of, tonight or whatever.
Doc, you have a question?
Yeah, it's so long ago.
Ouch.
Well, it's sort of like going backwards a little bit, but.
Do you want to fix my neck while you're working on it?
I can adjust it at the same time, yeah. So I see this now. So would you be looking at a project that's sort of like an apartment type of, or would it be individual homes?
No, I think we're probably looking at, more like what was developed at the Nike site, which is, maybe there would be, some of the houses would be attached. They would not be more than 2 stories. I mean, I think we're looking at something that tries to give one a feeling of kind of a more kind of like housing duplex kind of community rather than more of a larger scale, more massed housing. But I think, again, so much of this depends on what we find out when we do additional engineering and additional soil borings and also work with, an architect at a conceptual level. And that's part of it. And, it's just true, as John said, unfortunately, we don't get off cheaply to do that kind of work. But, it is money I believe it's money well spent in terms of the end result. Because what you're going to have is, as I said when I was doing the initial presentation, if we can make this work, you're going to have a development that has contours before it ever gets to the developers who are bidding, pursuant to the RFP, that is going to be consistent with this town and with the immediate neighborhood. And that's what you want, both for the people who are living there and for the larger community.
Well, my vision has always been it's going to be more like the Centennial Court development as opposed to the Inn and Court.
Gotcha.
I think we'd do one level and spread them out. We have a lot of land 16.2 acres, we can only get 90 bedrooms, so we have plenty of land to develop. So I think that that would be the kind of the concept we'd have, single floor, spread out. So I think that that would be the idea that we'd be looking at.
And I guess I had another question, just simply because I'm far from being an engineer, I have no idea. What is the cost of putting in a light? I mean, is that like $500,000 or is it like $3 million?
Jay Barrows told me that the ballpark figure is $1 million.
It is.
Yeah.
And that really depends upon the layout.
Yeah.
Right, I understand that.
Yeah, there's also
This-
all
the
sorts of
design.
variables, but that's, that's kind of the benchmark.
That's what they were looking at. Okay, thank you.
A large part of that cost is synchronizing the rest of the lights on.
Exactly.
Oh, I'm sure they will.
Yeah.
So we hit them all.
So this is, obviously, this is already on the warrant, so it's drafted up, it's gonna go in front of AdCom and start that process. Again, my concern, if a few more weeks, we can get even tomorrow, we might get a preliminary. $1 million for a signal versus, it's gonna dwarf this project if it's on the backs of you guys, so there's a lot of, and I agree, the chicken and the egg, how do we get there? And again, the same issue we had at 6:30. We got this information at 3 o'clock today. I'm in no position to vote for it tonight. It's gonna go with all the other articles that we're gonna go.
We're not gonna ask you to vote on it tonight.
I mean, it's up to you guys, but I'd like to see the deed. You talked about a phase one update. We don't have the phase one report. I don't know if that means it's contaminants or it's wetland, there's a lot of information that just is not here, or we just got this little bit of information this afternoon, so.
I mean, with due respect, part of what we're asking for is to be able to have the funds so that we can do further analysis, so that, we all know what's there. And my own feeling is that, for a development of this size within the state, and what we're looking at as potential financing resources, that we could probably very well factor into that and still have it be feasible, the cost of doing the light, even if it weren't 100%, I think it could be the lion's share. You're talking about a magnitude. And, yes, it's true that the state, I mean, I would envision that this would be something that would use low-income housing tax credits and other soft debts through the Department of Housing and Community Development. I do think that while it is clear that at this point, if you look at the state overall, that family housing is more of a need than senior housing, nevertheless, I mean, you look at your own housing production plan, and what it shows is that by 2030, you have a very significant increase in the older population, and the percentage of people who are under 30 or under 35 has dropped significantly from what it is right now. And so, I do think that notwithstanding, I mean, we're all talking about, state resources in this day and age, which have become more precious and more competitive. Clearly there's been a very articulated development of priorities under the current administration and at the Department of Housing and Community Development under the current secretary. That doesn't mean that senior housing isn't extremely important and isn't getting funded, because it is. I mean, I've done senior housing and done it with low-income housing tax credits, and it's been tremendously successful. I think, I think the state, despite the fact that it worries about, how it will be marketed and how it will be occupied over time, that doesn't appear to be an issue once these projects are up and running by and large. They're very well, low occupancy, vacancy rate, and, operating pretty smoothly.
We may be ahead of ourselves, but what is this gonna, in ballpark numbers? So the Foxborough Housing Trust has money because it was a pool of money that got from other developers, and you've met with them, so there's some seed money potentially starting for the study. If this goes forward, 90 units times X amount of dollars a square foot, this is gonna cost the town, this is all town money, right?
No.
That-
No.
No town money at all on
Town money,
this?
it's all private.
All private, okay.
Well,
So,
public in the sense that it's state.
state money.
Yeah, but, you know, I mean, the investment in the, you know, so the allocation of low-income housing tax credits comes, you know, through the state, but it is private investment.
Okay.
And, I mean, that's part of the reason, for example, why in the budget, I would say at the outset, one of the things you want to do, notwithstanding what you can observe by looking around you and by what Candace deals with every day, you know, we need to know from the standpoint of how the Department of Housing and Community Development looks at things. Can you produce a market study that's going to show, you know, investors, you know, because we're not in the immediate Boston area, you know, where there's a lot of CRA possibilities, Community Reinvestment Act possibilities, you know, we're going to be able to show that there's a demand and a need, and, you know, the investors, I mean, you know, this has much lower risks in some ways than developments which are closer to the quote-unquote inner city. You know, so it's a juggling act, but you know, I think that even with all the instability that is produced at the federal level right now because of talk of, you know, tax reform, et cetera, that the market is, that the tax credit market is wearing well, you know, with its uncertainty, and deals are getting done.
One other point is that this, as Jim knows, this has been going on for a long, long time. And when we first got the legislation, the Housing Authority was going to have to buy this land. And I'm not taking any credit for this personally, but I negotiated with them and I said, you know, we have no money and we can't get that money and we don't want to come back to the town. So we were able to talk the state into essentially they gifted us the land. So there's 16.2 acres that we've been gifted for nothing. And part of the inducement was that we had a housing trust fund that could maybe help us get forward. And none of this is in writing, but this was all part of the negotiation. So I think it's really, I'm not saying we have a moral responsibility, but I think the Affordable Housing Trust has some sort of responsibility to help us go forward with this project. Because we really, getting 16.2 acres of developable land is a huge gift. I mean, if the state put that out on the open market, and I think you know, Jim, that would, you know, that's probably $1 million or $1.5 million worth of it. So we got that for nothing. So I think asking for $50,000 of the Affordable Housing Trust is really just a drop in the bucket. And I think that we ought to be able to go forward and do that so we can, and again, I think that, you know, we're not going to be bashful. If we get beyond a certain point, we're going to come back and ask for more, because again, the point is that the more skin we have in the game, the better we're going to be off in the end. Because if we can come to a developer and say, look, we have all this work done, we've done all the due diligence, this is essentially a turnkey operation for you to come in and develop this, we're going to be in much better shape. If we have, you know, we can only say, well, you know, we have a survey here, you're going to get all sorts of people all over the country, you know, and that's going to have to filter through. So what we're really trying to do is to get our project into the best position that we can get the best developers to do the best thing for the town. Unfortunately, we're not in a position where we can manage it or do what we used to do. But we want to have the most skin in the game, and by using the Affordable Housing Trust money, we can do that.
Well said, thank you, appreciate that.
One more quick question, if I could, please. Are these apartments to rent or like condos that the seniors would buy?
These will be, they're all going to be affordable rentals.
Rental.
And all affordable. They're not going to be 40B type. They'll be all affordable. That's the legislation requires that they all be affordable, similar to what we have at Centennial and Annan.
Okay.
Is it location restricted? Is it more geared towards Foxborough residents? a waiting list type thing,
Well,
or?
that would be up to, we're gonna put that in part of the RFP.
Yeah.
We would
And we've
try
got to
to
get
make
past
it.
the requirements of DHCD too,
Right.
John,
Yeah,
in terms of,
we've got-
but there are ways to,
But we've done, we've been fairly successful in doing that in Foxborough. And I think, what we found out is a practical matter that people don't want to move from their support base. And if we said, for a while, thought we were gonna get all sorts of people from Brockton. It never happened, because people don't want to move away from where their support base is. Where they know the grocery store is, how they can get to the Dunkin' Donuts and all that sort of stuff. So I think that, we may get people from Mansfield and Norton and Attleboro and Plainville, but we're not gonna go an awful lot beyond our market. But our market is there. Amazingly enough, we're the second oldest community next to Chatham in the state. So we certainly have a market there, and I think as Bill has heard, and Candace hears daily that there was a lot of people that need this. So I think we can fill these very easily from our own base.
It's the number one issue
Absolutely.
every single month, the number one issue.
Candace,
Absolutely, and it's all local.
do you
All
have
local.
a ballpark number of the income qualified Foxborough residents that are on your waiting list right now?
A
Ballpark.
number of them. This is, I have to say, of the authorities, even which we manage, we have the healthiest local waiting list out of all of them. It's tremendous. We have at least, and this is minimal, I'd say 40 to 50 local applicants who are in need,
50%
qualified.
occupied day one.
What was that?
That's 50% occupied day one.
Yeah, no question. It's
Without even doing a
tremendous.
market study, just based on,
And it grows every day. When I'm on the phone with Council on Aging and we work hand in hand every single day, I'm humbled by the fact that we have that kind of need, and it's all within our community.
I would dare
So, yeah.
say that if once that word gets out that that's going to be available, that number will grow exponentially.
yeah, I
Absolutely.
think so too. It has a way of doing it.
But I think tonight was a good discussion about understanding the priorities and making sure this is how it's supposed to be laid out. And I think the conversation about the safety of the intersection is really a key issue. Fortunately, that study has already been well underway, so we should have some information. I'll reach out tomorrow to see what we can find out. All right?
can we have a follow-up on this, maybe in, either next week or 2 weeks?
Sure. We'll have a report for you as the next meeting for the 31st. Yeah.
Because we are in some time constraints to make sure.
No question.
We either leave it on the warrant articles or we pull it, so.
Fair enough.
And I think you need to sign the warrant at the next meeting, because it has to be posted second week in November. So you'll have to sign it before then.
You could
Things can always
have
come
a
off.
special meeting if you had to.
Yeah,
to do
things
that.
can always come off, but
Yeah.
you need to sign
Yeah.
your endorsement.
I have to apologize, I've not reread the Affordable Housing Trust law or bylaw, but does the selectmen have to approve it, or is this just approving it to get on the warrant?
Well, the money has to be approved by the selectmen, correct? The use of the money? As I recall?
remember that right now. I think, this group is definitely under the Selectmen of Housing Trust.
I think
Yeah.
I think there's supposed to be one member that is a selectman on it.
Janine.
You are, you're on it?
Yeah.
Why don't you say something?
It was going so well, she didn't have to.
No, I went to the presentation, and you guys asked all the questions
Okay.
that were asked at the presentation, so I already knew the answers.
So the question is whether or not you have to approve that, the amount, or...
Well, if it gets approved at the town meeting, John, I think then the selectmen would have the ability to approve it following that. You follow me?
Well, I'm not sure, I'm not sure how the process, again, the
Yeah.
process is, do you have to approve it
Before.
to go to the town meeting, or do you just have to approve it to put it on the warrant?
Well, they have to approve the article to go on the warrant anyways. That's required because it's a special town meeting
I
anyway.
understand that, but
So I guess the question is.
that's a minimum, but do you have to, as part of that, do you have to vote to approve that money? I think we have to all check that.
Yeah, we'll double check that.
Check the bylaw,
Does
see what-
town meeting authorize the selectmen to vote one way or the other to spend the money? Is that what the warrant
And
articles do?
I apologize
Once it's approved at town meeting,
It says town, to see if the
because
town
I'm
will vote to
retired, I didn't
transfer
check
an
that
amount
bylaw.
from
Shame on you.
From the
Affordable Housing
Trust.
To pay the cost.
That's the issue. Yeah, so the money has to be transferred from the Affordable Housing Trust, and town meeting is the only body that can do that. Okay?
No, I understand that, but I don't, but there's a technical question is whether or not the Board of Selectmen has to approve prior to approve the transfer, or that they just have to approve going on the warrant. And I think that we better check that bylaw to make sure that,
We'll double check that.
yeah.
I know that I'm looking at the meeting minutes from 2015, and we asked that and answered it back then. It's in here somewhere.
Yeah,
Yeah.
Because I think we're all, remember when the money,
yeah.
remember when the
Right.
money came over?
Yeah, we had the sundown clause. It was
Yeah.
gonna-
Yeah, so I think if
Yeah.
it's town meeting voting to approve the transfer, that we should probably have to vote the money
Yeah, it's a
prior
question
to
of the
that.
time, but the time.
Is it one before the other is the question?
Yeah,
Yeah.
I think we have to make sure that that's right, so we don't do it.
The wrong way.
It's a simple check.
We'll check that with council on that. All right.
So I just want to say one, then I'll stop. And I don't know if it has to be said, but I want to thank you guys. I know you're volunteers. You've done a ton of work for many years to get it to this point. I'm not negative against the project. In my opinion, it's the worst intersection in town,
Mhm.
and it's unchanged for a reason.
Yep.
I don't know if it's going to be easy or difficult to change, and
Yep.
it goes back to what you're saying, John, of the chicken and the egg. We're kind of stuck there.
Mm.
But I didn't want people watching this to not know that, I mean, I know you guys put the time and the effort, and I appreciate the stuff that you're doing for the seniors.
It's a public safety concern that you have to address.
No, we've had enough, we have enough problems with people coming out on Baker Street, let alone coming on that intersection. So that's clearly something that, we're not going, we would not, I mean, personally, I would not even contemplate putting a development in there unless that was resolved. I mean, I couldn't have it live without my conscience.
That's fair.
Thank you.
Thanks, everyone.
Have a good night, everybody.
Thank you.
Jim, you're gonna be at the bottom of the list if you apply now.
If I hold it off long enough, I'll be first on the list. Definitely a need, we said right off the bat.
Yep.
Oh, God, yeah.
So if any of you put any bets on the Celtics this year, Gordon Hayward broke his ankle in the first quarter.
Get out! The good thing is, it's first game of the season. We'll
Yeah,
be
it's first
back
game
in
of
16
season, yeah.
weeks.
Yeah, I got a text right before this discussion from my son. He said, "Dude, the picture is ugly. It's ugly. It's ugly." Yeah.
And I guess Feeney won the election.
Oh, did he?
We did.
Okay.
We did.
Okay. All right.
Going to the party at the
All right.
Orpheum.
Take care now. All right. See you later. So.
Okay, Selectmen's update, forgive me, I don't have anything.
Quarter of 10, we don't mind.
I'm sorry.
I'll add some if you're not sick of listening to me. We're doing the turkeys and thank you cards and desserts for veterans this year. I'm trying to put something in the paper tomorrow, I'll write it tonight. But just if there's any veterans out there that want to revisit that again this year, just reach out to Michael Johns or myself, and anyone that wants to donate. 100% of the money goes back just to simple turkeys and tickets to the football game. So
How many years is that now?
this will be the fifth
year?
We're starting early this year, too.
No, usually you're like a week before Thanksgiving.
New leaf.
I just want to mention thanks to all the volunteers that did come forward to the sign changing stuff. So we've got, I think, 14 or 15 people that stepped forward. So that's well underway.
Good.
And I'll get you that waiver form
Okay.
by Thursday.
Yep, and I'll get you at least whoever is changing it this coming Sunday to get them to fill it out, so you'll have that.
So who's going to maintain the calendar? Who's going to do it? It's 14 people. 14 different people. Yeah.
Yeah,
So
I've got it. It's simple. It's pretty easy.
Good.
And I'll probably get with you guys and Caitlin offline and figure out when stuff comes in and the best time.
Okay.
But the way I've
That's
told
great.
everybody is, I'll get the information by Friday, and
Yeah.
then we'll change the signs out on Sunday, because typically,
Fine.
whatever event is up there is ending on a Saturday.
Okay, sounds good. Great.
Anybody else? Anything?
All right, just a couple things, I want to just say from the outset. This likely will be a last meeting in this building, so finally, the day has arrived. We think, and I say this with 95% certainty that it's going to happen, but the only thing that we're waiting on now is that we think the parking lot will be final paved next week, and then they're going to try and stripe it before it gets too cold, of course. But you can't stripe it immediately after it gets paved, because then the oil bleeds through the markings, so they're trying not to do that too quickly. They're hoping to get a rain over it that will keep wash off the excess oil. The sign is under construction right now. The parking lot lights are operational. They were all erected this week, and they're wide and they're operational. We checked them out tonight. The sidewalks have been poured. We have some landscaping to finish, and we have mainly the parking lot. And the other thing, interior-wise, particularly in the meeting room, is that the local cable access is working on finalizing the wiring connections. They spent a ton of time and money to really do a first-rate setup for that room. It's probably one of the best setups you'll see anywhere. And they spent a lot of time and effort to get that ready. So they're just hopeful that all the final connections will be done by the end of the month, and that will be an outside connection with, I think, Comcast, if I'm not mistaken, to make that happen. So we'll work with them to make sure that happens on time. We'd like to do a ribbon cutting. Obviously, didn't want to do it on a Halloween night. Didn't seem that would be a good choice of nights to have it. So we're going to try and work on it for the following Selectmen's meeting, which would be the 14th of November 14th, and so we'll start sending some invitations out. I want to get the board's reaction to that. I mean, we can do it at a Selectmen's meeting, or we can have a special day for it. We could do it a separate day on a Sunday, if you wanted to do that. The thought would be just to have a ribbon cutting right before a Selectmen's meeting, maybe at 6 o'clock, something like that. Have a few speakers, and then head right into the meeting. So that's your call.
If you did it on a Saturday or a Sunday, you could do like an open house because I've talked to a lot of people that haven't even seen the town hall.
Yeah, and we'd love to have more. The more the merrier, quite honestly. We'd love to have people come through it. So we can do it, or we can do a special days for an open house.
Yeah.
For that as well.
I think a weekend you get more people, because a lot of people work and shuffling kids to, soccer, lacrosse, whatever it is.
And with the time change, it'll probably be dark by the time you have your meeting, so.
What about an opposite Tuesday from our meeting? That way,
we could
town hall's open and
we're open
employees
anyway,
are there.
Yeah.
That might not, just for a ribbon cutting and a tour.
That's a good thought.
Good idea.
Do
So
it a little earlier, like 5, while it's still light.
yeah, the 21st would be your next meeting. Is that?
No, the 14th is the next one.
No, but the 14th is in between the next meetings.
off meeting.
So the question is that right next to Thanksgiving week?
Yeah.
Tight.
Yeah.
What's wrong with the 7th?
I just want to make sure we get enough notice out to people for it. We could probably start that process now, though. If everything's done, I want to make sure everything's done.
That's election day.
We don't want to do that.
So what if we go back to if we do the ribbon cutting at the earliest time, but say our meeting's at 7, have an open house at 5:30, people can come and see
employees
it.
are still working, they can go walk around.
We could have open house at 5.
Yeah, and then let that go for a while, and then do the ribbon right before the meeting.
Yeah.
It's tough to
it's tough to schedule.
It's tough to get on a weekend to get people to come in.
Yeah,
and
because
stuff
there
on
are
the night.
games and stuff like that, football games and everything. So
yeah, that's fine. I just wouldn't want to say let's do it at 6:30 right before one of our meetings or something.
And we could also
did it at 5.
If we did it at 5, and then we could have an open house starting at 5, and then have a formal ribbon cutting at like 6:30 or 6 o'clock. Right. And then what I would do is we could also have an open house day too. Beyond that, I mean, it's perfectly fine to do that. Right. All right, so we'll try and shoot for the 14th, if that's, everybody's okay with that. And
I think I'd rather do the ribbon cutting like early. And if you have have people come in, if they want to come in and take a look, and then
Okay.
have our meeting,
Yeah.
rather than right before the meeting. Because
Yeah.
people might want to come in and see the selectmen's meeting room.
So do you want to do the ribbon cutting at 5, and then,
Yeah.
Yeah, and then open house.
and open it up for open house, and then,
And
and then
we can shoo
start the
them out
meeting,
when
just
we
for
have
the
our
meeting.
No, shoo 'em
Well, they
into
can
the
stay
meeting
in,
room.
they can stay in for the meeting if they want.
Hang out.
Could be our biggest crowd ever. So that's the key thing. Okay, so thanks for that direction on that. The sewer construction project is underway. They're moving right along with that, so they ran into a little bit of rock, but they think they're gonna be okay getting through it, so, which is good news. Also, the Kennedy Donovan Center has announced its grand opening, which will be on Wednesday, November 8th, from 8 a.m. to 10 a.m., or 4 p.m. to 6 p.m. And that's on one commercial. That's the new Kennedy Donovan Center that's located right on off of 140 near Dunkin' Donuts, at the corner of Central.
Tough intersection.
Yeah, another tough intersection. Another tough intersection, but, okay, so, just wanna make everybody aware of that. I'm pleased to announce that we have extended an offer of employment to the first director of the Regional Communications Center, Mr. Robert Verdone of Wakefield, Mass. Has accepted the offer. Highly talented young man. He's been a specialist in emergency communications for many, many years. Was with the Coast Guard, and also has been working most recently with the city of Chelsea, and heading up. He's the deputy director of their emergency communications center. Extremely knowledgeable. Has impressed everybody on the committee. All the fire chiefs and police chiefs were thrilled with getting this guy. So we were very fortunate to get him. If we didn't get him, he had like 3 other offers of employment that he was going to get if he didn't get with us. So we're very pleased to get him. To have him start with us. He'll be starting. We think the first week in November.
November 1st, yeah.
So.
Where's he gonna be? Where's his office gonna be?
We're gonna put him. We have
we
a swing office in the town hall right now. So we're gonna put him there temporarily. So he'll work out of our building initially, and then we think and then he'll work on getting the new facility ready. They're working on the Mansfield police station. That's going to be part of the whole process. And then
He'll eventually be housed there.
He'll be housed there eventually, but he'll work out of our building temporarily.
How long will it be in our building for?
It could be an 18-month period, because it's going to be a while before that construction is completed. So, and that's timed with the opening of their new public safety facility in Mansfield, which is under construction now. That's about 18 months away, at least. Just want to update you on we received a notification today on the Foxborough Power Forward program that we're offering a rate of $9.203 cents per kilowatt hour. If we do nothing, people can be automatically enrolled in it. If they want to go to a green energy program, it's 9.806 cents per kilowatt hour. But if you opt out and remain with National Grid Basic Service, right now the residential rate is 12.673 cents per kilowatt hour. So we're saving residents well over 3 cents per kilowatt hour. That's rather significant. So it's good.
Bill, can I ask, there was still confusion from the people that I talked to on that. If a resident that has a house in Foxborough does absolutely nothing and just ignores everything, they get the town rate?
They would get the town rate, yes.
Only if they didn't.
Unless they were enrolled in another program somewhere.
If they were enrolled in another program,
like that.
Then they would stay in that program until it expired, and then they would get notified. Okay. Because I actually have that in my own community where I went to a separate rate. I don't think the town actually. I think they offer it now though, so if I get a notice, I can actually go onto their rate.
Okay.
If I want to do that. And I think those are the key points I just wanted to raise. We got a lot going on. I am leaving on Friday for the International City Managers Meeting for a few days in Texas. We'll be back on Wednesday night, and so I'm meeting with colleagues from around the world, talking about some pretty significant issues, dealing with things ranging from technology issues and how we can do our jobs better, as well to very difficult issues dealing with gun violence and public safety issues that are really plaguing the entire country, including stuff in our own backyards here. So we're got a lot to deal with on that basis. So, all right, that's all I have.
I think in the essence of time, I will forego my update.
Thank you.
Move to adjourn.
Second.
Motion made, second. Any further discussion? Seeing none. All those in favor? Aye. Good night, everybody.
You guys have it.